And we're live with today's 220-1102 Core 2A Plus study group. This is our pre-show. You can see we got about 10 minutes to go before we get started at the top of the hour. I'm just making sure that everything is as it should be. Let's see. Although that's me checking to see what's broken. I guess that was the appropriate thing to say. Hello, chat room. Let's get the chat room popped out. Pop out the chat room. Pop out the chat room. All right. Excellent. So things are working. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. We'll get started in just a few minutes. I'm just making sure this time that we have enough drive space to record the entire event, which is what I did not do 2 days ago. I got part of it, but we have multiple recordings going on, so that helps a lot. Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here. Got folks already checked in from Brazil and Vancouver. Haven't been out the West Coast in a while. I got family out in that Vancouver area in Hamilton. Is Hamilton? No, it's not Hamilton. Hamilton's on the other side. It's, what was the name of that suburb of Vancouver? I'll think of it in a bit. Surrey. That's where they were. Anyway, love Vancouver. Beautiful place. Enjoy it every time we go out there. Hello, Tacoma Wah in Kentucky, Vienna, New York, Texas, Calgary. A lot of folks checking in. Thanks for being here. There's downtown Houston. Appreciate you being here. We've got all new 220-1102 Core 2 questions today. We got plenty. So I've been trying to work on my cabling / lighting / there are things behind the scenes I'm trying to make a little bit better here and there. There's little tiny tweaks. And every time I make a tweak, I break something else. So I decided early on this morning, we're not going to touch anything else. I set everything up this morning very early just to make sure that everything's there. Light the fireplace. No, it's lovely outside right now. It's 70 degrees. So no. In fact, I probably should just go ahead and turn off the pilot light. It's not going to be used anymore this season. Not this time. Hello, Sydney, Australia. Can't sleep. 4 a.m. in Australia. Well, I'm sorry you can't sleep, but you can listen to us while you get ready for your day. You're just up early. It's not that you can't sleep. It's that you're up early. You're ready to take on the day. Think of all these things you'll be able to do now with all of this extra time. You should take advantage of that. Like this, you could attend this live stream. You are doing something with that time, and it's very productive. Okay, what else? I think we're good. 2 recordings here. Stream looks good. I had massive internet connectivity problems yesterday. We had a local internet provider issue. It was one of those things where even on the app, they're telling you, don't call us. We know there's a problem. We know it's not working properly. That was all day yesterday. That was probably the bulk of yesterday, starting early in the morning all the way until this morning when I finally got the text message from them that said, okay, we think we have fixed everything. Now, I have not looked at, did I keep my ping going? I wonder if I did. I don't think I did. I think I turned it off. And of course, it's not in this browser. I was trying to remember where I put it. And let's see if it's still plugged in. Nope. I had a ping session going so I could watch what was going on. And that was delightful. That is to say, not delightful. Because what would happen is that every 45 minutes, every 30, 45 minutes, an hour, the internet would go away for 5 minutes and then come back. And I was thinking the whole time, I'm so glad I don't have a live stream today. This would be ridiculous. Okay, so we are recording. We've got video looks good. My aux is not flickering yet. I tried to work on that a little bit. We'll see if that happens. 5-minute warning just hit my watch. There we go. So we're good there. Amex had an issue yesterday. I wonder if they're not located here. I know where Amex is located. I used to be the director of voice and data for a third-party call center, one of the third-party call centers used by Amex. They were very demanding. They didn't put up with a lot of slack. They had very specific requirements, and good for them. That's what you would hope from somebody at that level dealing with finances, and they had a very specific set of requirements and a set of expectations of us. They were actually very nice to work with. There were other clients of ours that had no idea what it took to centralize all of their call center services through a third party. Think of all the things that have to happen with getting the phone lines brought in, people in the seats, the applications on their desktops, the phone systems working as they're supposed to be. It was a thing. So that's I don't know that I'll ever go back to call center outsourcing. That's sort of, is it working for evil? I'm not sure it is, but it's close, right? It's something like that. All right, I'm working with a new monitor here. It's very bright, and I'm going to have to, I got 4 minutes left. We're not going to change it now. That's just how it's going to be. That's just how it's going to roll. It's just going to be bright because we're not touching it, everybody. I got the whole weekend to work, and then next week, of course, we have both Network Plus and Security Plus at the same time. What holiday is my favorite? Well, that would be Millard Fillmore's birthday, of course. Oh, you only gave me two options, Christmas or Thanksgiving. I like the spot right between those. I'm going to have to say Christmas because there's trees and lights and things. We don't do a lot of trees and lights and things for Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is more of, here are dead things. Here's a dead tree with some dead leaves, and they're colorful, but I don't know that Thanksgiving's really, I guess it's certainly a decidedly American, obviously American holiday, which is kind of nice. But I just like Christmas. I'm just a Christmas kind of person. There's a lot of reasons for that, none of which you will know about, none of which I will tell you about. But that's how that works. Should I do ITIL first, the IT Infrastructure Library, or CompTIA A+? Well, I guess that would depend on what your managers or what people hiring would like you to have. I find that for people who are manager level and higher, ITIL makes a lot of sense. Why they force it upon people who are not at the management level, I have no idea. They think they're doing a good thing. They are not. But that's why I always say A+ is the more practical for entry level. And of course, now my aux display is flickering. You can't see it because my big head's there, but now, of course, it's flickering. So there you go. There's something about going live because it has not done anything until we went live. I'm trying to figure out where the flickering's coming from. You never see this. It's on a separate panel. I think it's only for the display that's being sent into my switcher. There's a lot of questions there. This is me talking out loud and telling you things that mean absolutely nothing to you. So I'm happy to do that. I do that all the time. Is it okay if I study your course notes instead of a study guide? That's not advisable. Would you just study notes to pass a college course? No. You would go to the course. You would have lectures. There would be labs. There would be hands-on. There would be study sessions. You wouldn't just read somebody's notes. You'd never do well. So if you're interested in never doing well, yes, the notes work great. If you're working towards a level of mediocrity, that's exactly where you should be. Hopefully you can tell I don't think that's a great idea. Finally, somebody with some good troubleshooting recommendation. Mike says, have you tried turning it off and on again? Well, thank you, Mike. That's now. Now, what you don't realize is Mrs. Professor Messer, who is not a technician, that's her standard response to me. Well, have you tried turning it off and back on again? Maybe that'll do it. And she knows it because we watch IT Crowd together. So she knows that, and I'm disabled. We do that a lot. Because sometimes I am. That's just how if you put it in rice, that's another one of those awful things. That's not going to do anything for you. It's not going to help you. Rice ain't going to do it. Do I have 50 people for your staff behind the scenes? I don't know if you've looked around this room. Do you see anybody? No, there's nobody. There's nobody here. No, we don't. We do not. And there it is, top of the hour. Time to get going. What are we waiting for? Well, we're waiting for me at this point. Let's click the green button. That's not a green button. I need to click the right button. There's the green button. Nothing would start unless the green button was there. And before we get going, really quick, is that Loaf of Soap in the chat room says, any advice for the N10008 test? That would be Network Plus. I take it in an hour. Go get your exam objectives right now. Scan them. Look for things you don't know. See if you can cram them in there very quickly. With an hour left, there's not much I can do for you, but that's my recommendation. Go to the exam objectives, exam objectives, exam objectives. Let's do a live stream. Here we go, everybody. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the March 2023 Professor Messer. What is this? It's the 220-1102. I just said it moments ago. So let's say it again. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the 220-1102 Core 2A Plus study group coming to you live from Messer Studios. Thanks for being here. We have so much to go through today. I have brand new questions all for you directly from the 220-1102 exam. There's a lot of information to go through, so we're going to jump right into things where first I will tell you, if you are here live, we would love it if you can participate with us. The way that you would do that is you would go to this link that is on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. When you go to that link, there will be a question waiting for you, and that's how you know that everything is working properly. If there's not a question waiting for you, then something has gone horribly wrong. You may want to try that link again. We also have an app that you're able to use. Technically speaking, it's Socrative's app. That's the service that we use. The app that you would download is the Socrative Student app, not the Socrative Teacher app. They have multiple apps. Make sure you get the right one. If you use the app, it will ask you for a room name. The room name is Professor Messer, all one word. Spelled out, it is PROFESSORMESSER. Make sure you spell it right, or you'll be in a room with no questions. That's no good for anybody. The question that we have for you today comes from last month. So our first question, technically not a new question. All the other questions are brand new. But for our first question here, I'd like to see if you're able to get in and answer the question, make sure Socrative's working okay, make sure everything's doing what you would expect it to do. The question you should see on the screen says, a Windows computer displays the message, your computer is low on memory. Which of the following could potentially resolve this issue? Would it be increase the virtual memory, delete all duplicated documents, upgrade to a larger capacity M.2 drive, reset system protection, or clear the browser cache? If you think you know the answer, please do not answer in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You want to first go to professormesser.com/QA. That's the message on your screen, and lock in your answer. We will come back to that question, our rewind question, in just a moment. Well, we've got lots of things to go through as we break things down on this very busy day of questions and answers. We do a lot during these live streams. I'll let you know that we have even more things going on when we turn off the stream itself. So there's lots to go through. We've got professormesser.com/YouTube to find us on our YouTube channel, professormesser.com/Twitter for our daily pop quiz questions. And if you like your pop quiz question with a little bit of a pretty picture, we've got professormesser.com/Instagram. Those are just a few of the places you can go to find us and find information that can help you study for your exams. The exams, of course, are the 220-1101 and 220-1102. Those two exams are also called the Core 1 and Core 2, respectively, so you may hear them referred to as that. These are exams that came out in April of last year. They've not even been out a year yet. These are relatively new, which means these exams should retire somewhere around November of 2025, if I had to estimate. The exams themselves are 90 minutes long. And for the 220-1102, you need to earn a 700 score on this very unusual scale of 100 to 900. I don't know if that means you need 600 points out of the 800, or if you couldn't need 700 out of the 800. That would be a lot. Well, who knows? They intentionally make it a little more difficult to figure out. Don't worry about the grading. Just go into the exam, do the best you can. The grades will work themselves out at the end. That's all you have to worry about. And your certification, once you earn it, it's good for 3 years. So I put on here the exam retirements. These mean nothing. The exam release date and exam retirement means nothing if you are certified, because this is all about the exams. Once you're certified, you're good for 3 years, and you can renew it every 3 years. So you never have to take these exams ever, ever again. Doesn't that sound nice? So that's pretty good. It would not mean there is not a percentage. It is not 92% correct, thankfully. Thankfully, it's not that. So that's the real key. Maybe 600 out of 800 would probably be closer. But of course, we can't calculate it based on a percentage because each question is worth a different number of points. Now, today we're going to be talking about Core 2. That means we'll be talking about operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, and operational procedures. So we have quite a few different topics to step through, and we'll go through all of those today as part of the Q&A that we'll do during this first hour. I have a replay of this video available immediately afterwards on YouTube. It's done automatically. It takes a couple of minutes to make sure it's processed properly, and then it's available as soon as I hit the stop button. I also create an audio-only replay for those of you that are driving, you're working out, you can't really watch a screen. You may want to use more of this lower bandwidth option. It's published as a podcast format, so you can use any podcast listening program that you like. Maybe you have a streaming service you like to use, like Spotify or Google Podcasts or Apple Podcasts. You can find us there as well. And you'll find it also, the links to those are available on my site at professormesser.com/podcast. You'll find podcast audio only replays of our A+, our Network Plus, and our Security Plus live streams. We've also got, as I mentioned, that video replay. But if you look at the YouTube video description, I always look at the video description. There's always interesting things in there. And if you look at that on the Professor Messer videos for the study groups, you'll notice that there are timestamps listed. Those don't happen automatically. That's the hard work of my marketing manager, Lori. Hi, Lori. She's watching this replay, and she's going through and putting timestamps in for everything that we do so that tomorrow you can watch this video and really see exactly where this information is, maybe find things that you'd like a little bit faster. I was looking at my podcast breakdown. We've been doing these live streams for more than 10 years. And I think for the past 5, we've been putting these timestamps in there. So you should be very happy about that because you can find whatever you'd like to find and find it very, very quickly. Thanks, Lori. Does a great job with those as well. And thank you, chat room, for thanking her as well. She's watching the replay of the chat as it goes by as she's watching the video. So she also says hello to all of you as well. When we're not here, you can find us and everybody else, it seems, over on our Discord. We have a great community there of people that are studying for their certifications. They get together into our voice and our video channels to be able to study together. People ask questions in the chat. That's a good place to get in touch with me. You can find all of that on our site at professormesser.com/Discord. And that's a great community. If you haven't used Discord before, just follow the links. You can download it and use it as a client on your mobile device or on your computer, or simply use the web-based front end. Discord's a great resource regardless of what you're doing online. You'll find yourself joining a lot of different Discord services. There's Discord servers once you get there. Ours is at professormesser.com/Discord. Now, of course, eventually you're going to have to take this exam. That's how this works, of course. If you need to be certified, you go through this entire study process. Then you have to pay a little bit of money to take this exam. And you could, of course, go to the CompTIA website and pay full price for your voucher. Nobody's stopping you from doing that. But there are discounted vouchers, exactly the same one-day, one-seat voucher available on the Professor Messer website for all of your CompTIA exams. This is for folks who are in the U.S. or Canada. These discounted vouchers are available. You don't need a discount code. You don't need a coupon code. You don't need anything special. You just visit professormesser.com/vouchers, and all of the discounted vouchers are there. If you purchase a voucher from my site, you also get a bonus. This is not something you can get anywhere else. It's a book that I wrote called My CompTIA Exam Hacks. I've taken, 20 to 25 industry certifications throughout my career, and every time you learn something a little bit different with how to study, maybe strategies you can use during the exam. And what I did was take all of those tips and tricks and I put them into one single book. This is my CompTIA Exam Hacks. And if you buy the vouchers on my site, you also get the exam hacks as well. So lots to look at there. Find it all at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's go back to that question I asked earlier. This was our rewind question from last month that asks, a Windows computer displays the message, your computer is low on memory. Which of the following could potentially resolve this issue? Would it be increase virtual memory, delete all duplicated documents, upgrade to a larger capacity M.2 drive, reset system protection, or clear the browser cache? Let's show the results and see how we do. Well, we didn't get a majority on this one, very similar to how things went last month, by the way, but we did a little bit better, I think, than we did last month. 43% of you say increase virtual memory. You have 27% that say clear the browser cache, and then a two-way tie for third place with 15% for delete all duplicated documents and upgrade to a larger capacity M.2 drive. And then lastly, 0%, nobody chose reset system protection, which obviously clears up quite a bit of drive space on your computer. But that was the real key with this question, is that this question wasn't asking about drive space. The specific message we got was your computer is low on memory. And this, unfortunately, is something that a number of us do, is we take the idea of random access memory, RAM, those memory chips that are in our computer. Usually they're 4 gig, 8 gig, 16 gig of memory inside of our systems. And we conflate those with a storage system like an SSD or a hard drive. Well, those are obviously two very different things. The hard drive and the SSD are there to store data when we're not using it. And the memory in our systems, the RAM in our systems, we're obviously using to execute applications. Nothing works on our system unless it's in the memory or the RAM of that system. So if you're getting a message that the computer is low on memory, you've got a lot of applications running or a lot of data that's in the RAM of that system. How can we free up RAM? Now, there's a number of different ways to do it, but deleting all duplicated documents will free up storage space, but it doesn't free up any RAM that's inside of your system. Upgrading to a larger capacity M.2 drive sounds great. Let's do that, but it's not going to increase the amount of memory available. It doesn't resolve that message that you'll get on the screen. Clearing the browser cache also is a good way to free up drive space in a computer, but of course, again, freeing up drive space does not help us when we are low on memory. And lastly, resetting system protection is a great way to free up drive space. If you're really, really low on drive space, you may need that system protection for something else. That's really a last-ditch effort, which leaves us one thing that would allow us to resolve, at least potentially resolve, this memory problem, which is to increase virtual memory, which effectively carves out a little area of your hard drive to store things that are in memory that you are not currently using. So it's sort of a middle ground between storing information and using the memory. So we can take information in Windows. This is referred to as virtual memory. If you're in Linux, you may hear page file being used, although the mechanics of that are a little bit different in Linux than they are in Windows, but the same idea still applies. You can take things out of working memory, temporarily store them on the drive, and then if you access that application again, it will pull them off the drive so that you can quickly access that. That may help you, especially if you are trying to work through memory issues with RAM. Virtual memory is not memory at all. Virtual memory is storage on a storage device. So that's how it's able to free up the random access memory chips in your system by taking information off of the RAM and temporarily storing it on your storage drive. Very useful. And in fact, it's on by default on every single Windows system. If it's not on, you had to go in there and manually disable it, or it has been administratively disabled by your system admins. So this is a pretty good way to resolve some of these memory issues. Hopefully it's something that you have seen or you have run in on. The message you will get is probably something like this, where it shows your computer. Let's bring it back here. Your computer's low on memory. That's literally the message you will get in Microsoft Windows. You can really see how much is being used in Task Manager, and then ultimately you may want to go into your virtual memory options and modify some of those to free up some of that memory. So hopefully that's given you a little bit of a reminder over some of the things you can do to be able to make that happen. This is at least gives you an idea of how to approach these memory problems. And at the same time, now I know that everybody's able to get into Socrative and answer these questions. So we can now jump into some brand new questions this month. And as always, let's start our brand new questions with a performance-based question. Performance-based questions are questions that are not multiple choice. That last question we had was a question, and then there were many choices to select from. Well, multiple choice doesn't help us when we're trying to do more advanced questions. And CompTIA gives probably a handful of questions at the beginning of the exam that will be fill in the blank, drag and drop, matching questions, putting things in particular order, effectively anything that's not a multiple choice question. So I have for you a brand new performance-based question of the month. Let's see if you know how to do this one. This one is a matching question that says, match the scripting language to the most applicable description. And I have 4 different, languages I want to put here. It's more of an abbreviation of the language. In this particular case, it's the extension used in the files that are associated with these languages. So we have a .bat, .js, .ps1, .sh. Those are the 4 scripting languages written out with their extensions. And then we have 6 different descriptions. So there'll be 2 left over at the end of this. The descriptions are: create a disk cleaning script for Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. Description B is move a file from one Windows folder to another. Description C is automate a Microsoft Word mail merge. Description D is automatically modify Active Directory permissions. Description E is perform daily backups on all Linux servers. And the last, description F, is dynamically change the information on a web page. Now, we can put through our list everything we think these might be. So we're matching 1-to-1. That leaves 2 left over at the end that will not be matched to anything. So if you would like to lock in your answer, follow the link that's on your screen. There it is, professormesser.com/QA. Lock in that answer. Might be able to provide you with a little bit of more information on what you can do. Step through each one of those. Now, if you think they're already in the right order, you can simply move to put into this list 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, and you're done. Now, a number of you are I can see you're already submitting some answers. I can see them on my screen over here. So I've got a number of them that are being typed in and put there. All you really need to do is put the letters and numbers. You don't have to spell anything out, thankfully. Not a lot of typing here. But one of the things you need to do is remember what you put in, because it doesn't tell you what you locked in once you lock it in, or at least it didn't. I think it still works the same way. So match the scripting language to the most applicable description. So this one's a little bit tricky in that you really have to look at all of the possible scripting languages and then all of the possible descriptions to really match everything up the right way. So this really does require you to do a complete read through before you can even begin answering the question. And then at the end of it, you're not even using some of this information. It's sitting off to the side. We may be able to figure out what we would use or to use something different. We'll go through that at the end and see if we can figure out what the best solution for this might be. Now, you'll notice on here also that I did not put every scripting language listed in the CompTIA exam objectives. There's still some that aren't in this list, and that might be associated with some of the languages that are left over, one of the descriptions left over. We'll go through those as well. So a number of you, I see a few more locking in their answers. I want to give people another moment or two to get those in. Let's go through each one of these and see if we know what they happen to be. So let's clear the slate. And let's start with the first one on our list is BAT, BAT. That is short in the Windows and DOS world, back to the DOS world, is short for batch. That's a batch file. And they are most commonly associated with command line functions that you would use in Windows So at the Windows command line, we would run a batch file, which means it would be perfect for taking a file on a Windows machine and moving it from one folder to another folder. That's a very simple batch file. It's something you would commonly use a batch file for. You don't need anything extra. Now, other scripting languages could certainly do this. Python will do that. Other types of scripting languages will do that. But the question asks, which is the most applicable to the description? And I would say when you're dealing with Windows, using the native batch files is a perfect way to do that. Next is .js. .js is JavaScript, which is different than Java. I don't know if some folks are maybe not aware of that, is that Java is a programming language, JavaScript a scripting language that has nothing to do with Java. It doesn't. So how confusing is that? The answer is very. It's very confusing. So we have to remember that. Now, JavaScript is great for manipulating or changing the way that a browser screen looks. And the browser screens that you would be working with, that means that if you were to dynamically change the information on a web page, that is perfect for JavaScript. If you go to the Professor Messer website, there's JavaScript I use there for network management, for showing different things on the screen, from using, when you use menus, you click on the menu and things are pulling down on the screen, but you didn't have to change anything else on the screen. That's JavaScript that does that for you. So changing information on the web page, again, there are scripting languages that do similar things, but in this case, JavaScript really is the best fit for something like that. Next on our list, let's keep going through our list of items. Next is PS1. This is not referring to a gaming console back in the day. This is referring to PowerShell. And PowerShell is a Microsoft Windows really administrative scripting language. You can think of it that way, although it does much more than just administration. But PowerShell allows an administrator to get into the internal workings of the Windows operating system in a way that batch files simply can't do for you. So PS1, if we're changing something with permissions for a Windows share, a PowerShell script is perfect for that because there's no way to do that natively in a batch file. So PS1 is perfect for, in this case, D, automatically modifying Active Directory permissions because that capability is integrated into PowerShell itself. One of the things I often mention on these study groups is that if you want a little bit more knowledge to bring to the table when you are working towards getting a job or getting a better job in IT, having a knowledge of PowerShell and having a knowledge of Python, both of those things are exceptionally good to have on your resume. Make sure that you spend some time really understanding those scripting languages. And the last scripting language is .sh. That is short for shell. And a shell script is very similar in style and function to the batch files that you would see in Windows. So if Windows has batch files, Linux, Mac OS, and other POSIX-based operating systems have shell scripts. Shell scripts then will be perfect to perform daily backups on Linux servers because that shell is built into the Linux operating system, or at least is included with every implementation you'll ever find of the Linux operating system. So those are the four that we were looking for. Batch files are best for moving one file from one Windows folder to another. JavaScript is good for dynamically changing the information on a web page. PowerShell can be used to automatically modify Active Directory permissions. And then shell scripts are great for performing daily backups of all Linux servers. That means we had a couple left over. We had to create a disk cleaning script for Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. So the different options we have on our screen are not really batch files, JavaScript, PowerShell, and shell scripts, not really designed to go from one operating system to another very cleanly. So those would not apply. And then automating a Microsoft Word mail merge would also not apply. But what could we do? How could we create a disk cleaning script for Windows, Linux, and Mac OS? One single script that we can simply put on all of these different operating systems, and it works without any changes effectively on all of them. Well, a great way to do that is using Python, and the abbreviation for Python files, something we would normally see, is .py. Python. Now, you could use other scripting languages as well for this. Someone in the chat room said, yeah, Java works, since we mentioned Java earlier, but Java is not in the CompTIA exam objectives for good reason. Java relatively antiquated in its operation these days. Although we still see Java being used on a number of mobile devices, it's an operating system that has effectively been removed from our desktop systems, primarily because of security issues. So we don't see Java used much on the desktop any longer. If you're still using Java on the desktop, it's because you have to, not because you want to. And so a disk cleaning script for Windows, Linux, and Mac OS, Python would be great for that. And lastly, automating a Microsoft Word mail merge, we would use something like Visual Basic Scripting. It is a Visual Basic that Microsoft put into their applications and their Windows operating system. You commonly see it being used for Microsoft Office applications. And so doing a mail merge or doing some type of macro within Microsoft Office or the Windows operating system is commonly something you would do with Visual Basics for Visual Basic scripting. So a nice set of applications, scripting, when you would use them. This is the goal with our studies that we do, with the exams we take, with the way that CompTIA asks things. They never ask you, what does a BAT file do? What type of file is that? You'd have to know, well, it's batch. What is a JS file? That's JavaScript. They never ask that. I call those trivia questions. They never ask trivia questions. They always ask something that's more involved. When would you use Python? When would you use JavaScript? And so knowing the larger scope of this is the part that's really important. I can see the Southerners in the chat room. So VBS, that's Vacation Bible School, of course. I see you. Yeah, we've all had similar childhoods, apparently. So hopefully you caught on to these scripting languages. You're familiar with them. If not, I've got a whole video that goes through them. It's section 4.8 of my 220.1102 course. The video name is called Scripting Languages. So something that can help you. Let's do some more questions. We're going to shift from a performance-based question back to a multiple choice-based question. This question asks, as I click this on my side, an administrator has configured real-time file synchronization between two servers. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Would it be yum, rsync, cat, df, or su? An administrator has configured real-time file synchronization between two servers. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Is it yum, rsync, cat, df, or su? Su, as they say in the world of Linux. If you think you know the answer, please don't answer in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See if you happen to know what this one is. I see a number of people putting in their answers very quickly. You can see those numbers going up very quickly. And that means either we know it for sure or maybe we all think it's something else. So that's the real key, is knowing what it happens to be. Hopefully this is one you're familiar with. Obviously, these are Linux-y type of answers. So this particular set of questions and answers all comes from those standards that we have to know for Linux. There's tons of, I wouldn't say tons, but certainly handfuls of Linux commands you need to know. I think there's probably about 15 of them, maybe more on the exam. And they just keep going over and over as we go through this. As we get through these questions, all of these Linux commands are so incredibly important to know. Not just what does that command do, but how would you use this command? So feel free to have a look at all of those and get familiar with what those options happen to be. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asked, an administrator has configured real-time file synchronization between two servers. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Is it yum, rsync, cat, df, or su? 80% of you, 80, say the answer is rsync. I thought maybe that one would be too on the nose, But apparently you say no. I think that's what you would like to use. And then single digits for everything else, effectively a four-way tie for last place. This is Yum, which is obviously used for package management to be able to install applications or uninstall applications on your system. We've got CAT, which stands for concatenate, where we can take a file or input and simply add additional input to it. It's a great way to combine files together. We can use CAT, for example. You can also view files on the screen with CAT. We also have DF. The df command for disk free allows us to see how much space is available in the different partitions that we have created on our Linux platform. And then lastly, we've got SU for super user. So if you need to run something with an elevated permission, in Windows, you would be the administrator is what you would choose, or run as administrator. For Linux, if you want to log in as the super user on a system, you would use the command SU. So the only one that really does make sense, and that's why 79% of you chose that one, is rsync, which is a great utility for being able to perform backups, to synchronize data between systems. And if you're in Linux, that can help you quite a bit. I have on my servers, I have multiple web servers, for example, for professormesser.com, and we're able to take those the information on one server and automatically keep it in sync with the other server by using not rsync itself, but using a very similar synchronization tool, synchronization utility. Very useful. All of these indeed are on the exam objectives. That's sort of the question we get with that. That is the right answer. If you answered B, rsync, you got that one absolutely correct. But before I go any further, there were a couple things that came by. I want to thank Dot Mars in the chat room with the $10 super chat, who says, I passed my A+ in October last year, just passed my Network Plus last week. Wanted to give a big thanks, Professor, working on Security Plus now. So working on that trifecta. Congratulations on your A+ and your Network Plus. And thank you also for the $10 super chat. Angelo in the chat room also a $10 super chat, who says, passed 1101 last month. Thank you, Professor. Onwards to 1102. And so you're in the right place for your 1102 studies. That can help you out quite a bit. Thanks for the super chat. Congratulations on your Core 1. Best of luck with your Core 2 as well. And I want to thank Samo with the £19.99 super chat. No specific question, just supporting what we're doing here, and we sure appreciate that too. Every little bit goes back to keeping the lights on and keeping these live streams going. So thanks very much for all of that. We sure appreciate your support and your ongoing support at that. It's always good to have you here for these live streams too. Thanks for being here. Let's do another question. So a lot of you said, let's do something else. Let's shift gears a bit. So here is a question that asks, a user needs to encrypt a folder of spreadsheets when logged out of the computer. Which of the following would provide this protection? Would it be WPA3, EFS, share permissions, least privilege, or ACL? A user needs to encrypt a folder of spreadsheets when logged out of the computer. Which of the following would provide this protection? Would it be WPA3, EFS, share permissions, least privilege, or ACL? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Follow the link on your screen. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We'll figure out what we might want to use there. A lot of options. While we're doing that, I want to thank Dark in the chat room with the $10 super chat. Dark says, I've been watching your videos, Professor. Your sessions here are great to put many things into perspective. Thanks again. Keep up the great work. Well, thank you so much as well. It does take some time to put together these live streams, so we sure appreciate that positive feedback, and we do enjoy doing them. It's a lot of fun to get everybody together and kind of step through some of these, and of course answer questions from you, which is what we'll do in the second hour. So stick around for that as well. And thank you so much for the $10 super chat as well. We've got more of you putting in your answers here. I don't want to jump onto them real quick, but this is one where you should be able to look at all 5 of those answers there and see which one really makes the most sense for what you're doing. So hopefully that's something you were keyed in on and you were able to really hunt down and find it very quickly. So this is one where in answer 4, let's do it again. This question asks, A user needs to encrypt a folder of spreadsheets when logged out of the computer. Which of the following would provide this protection? Is it WPA3, EFS, share permissions, least privilege, or ACL? Let's get rid of that bar there. Now let's see what you chose for this one. And about 70% of you say the answer is EFS. Not quite as many people were jumping on the other answers. 15% of you said it's share permissions, and then 9% say it's ACL. Then it drops down to 2 and 3% for WPA3 and least privilege. Well, if we go with the majority, which is EFS, then that might be our selection. I got some feedback for a recent pop quiz where I talked about protecting data on a system. And the idea of protecting data involves so many different aspects. You can have rights and permissions with ACLs. You could have encryption. You could have deletion, secure deletion, those types of things. All of those help protect data in different ways. And in our case, we're looking to encrypt data when we are logged out of our system. And a great way to do that is using encrypting file system, or EFS. EFS is a great way to do this. It's built into the NTFS operating system and by default into Windows overall. And it's a great way. You can simply look at the properties of a file or properties of a folder and simply choose an option. So easy. Just click the mark that says encrypt contents to secure the data. That's it. And now it's encrypting it. That's as easy as it gets right there. If you're running Windows Home, you won't see that by default. So you'd have to have professional or higher to be able to use that. The real question is, how's it making this encryption? Where's the key? If you've done anything with encryption, if you've looked into our Security Plus course, for example, having keys as part of encryption is such a critical part of encrypting data. So where does the key come from if we're not adding a key to our Windows? Well, you're logging in with a username and password. There's the key. It's really your login that's providing that authentication that allows someone to decrypt the data. So if somebody can't log into your system or they log in with a different username and password, they will not have access to your encrypted data because the only way to decrypt it is with the key that's associated with your login. And I even made a point in the course that if an administrator goes into your account and they modify outside the scope of Windows, there's a way to go outside of Windows and modify the passwords directly without using the operating system. If you do that, there is a potential, a very serious and obvious potential, that those files will be inaccessible because you just changed the password that was normally associated with that account, and you did it outside the scope of Windows. Windows usually syncs all of these things up. So another thing to think about, if there's EFS and you've been given a drive and said, get data off of this drive, don't start changing people's account information. You could effectively be deleting decryption keys that you would need to ultimately gain access to that data. EFS is the right answer, the encrypting file system. 69% of you got that one right. 17% of you said share permissions, which can certainly limit what someone's able to access on this drive. It might set up a user or a group of users to either have or not have access to certain data, but that doesn't help us encrypt any of the data. Share permissions have nothing to do with that. Share permissions are a way to set an access control list to the data. So effectively, a share permission and an ACL, those are effectively the same type of technology. So it would be neither of those. Least privilege is an important policy, an important concept in IT security, which says that you should only be given rights and permissions that allow you to do what you need to do for your particular job function and nothing else. So the days of handing out administrator logins to everybody in your company are long over, and no one should be doing that. You should only have permissions for a user that limit the scope of what they're able to do. And that's obvious not only to protect what they can do on a system, but if malware happens to attack their system and gain access, the malware would be limited to what that user has access to. So some great permissions or great advantages to the least privilege that you would have on a system, something that you should think about. And lastly, WPA3. The WPA3 encryption for wireless networks is useful for transferring data over the air, but WPA3 encryption on wireless networks does nothing to help encrypt data that's in a folder that is on your storage drive. So in this case, having a WPA3, you should have it turned on your wireless network. But to solve this particular problem, EFS is the technology you should be working with. If you answered EFS, you got that one absolutely right. Well done. As you can already tell, there is tons of information you need to know in this exam. Everything from hardware to printers to cloud computing. We've already talked about command lines and Linux and Windows and Mac OS. On top of that, you have to troubleshoot all of these things. Well, how do you even manage that? Well, you might want to read a book or take a course. And if you looked at my video course, it's 137 videos and 19 hours of information that you would need to pull from. That's a lot of data and a lot that I would expect someone to have to go through. So what I did was take everything from my videos and I put them in one single book. So I've got quite a bit, all of the important tables, all of the text that's in all of these slides that I go through, information from demonstrations, graphics that I create just for these courses. They are in this set of course notes. I've designed course notes for my 220-1101 and 220-1102 courses. The one you just saw was the PDF digital version. There's also a physical edition as well that I print on this representation of dead trees that I have here. That's what these books are. A lot of folks love to carry around the books because it's so convenient. You don't need a computer. You can be anywhere, pull this out. It has exactly the same information that's in the PDF, but it's in a format that you can carry around and use offline. If you purchase the physical edition, also tell you get the digital edition for free along with it. So while you're waiting on this to be shipped to you, you can already download immediately and go through the PDF. If you have the PDF and you would like to upgrade to the physical edition, just open a ticket in your member login or send me a message with the Contact Us link on my website, and I'll send you a discount coupon for the difference in cost so that you're able to do that. That's all of my course notes. Might be something you might want to consider. It not only will help you with your studies, it's a great way to support what we do here as well. Find out more on our website. The specific link, professormesser.com/1102 notes. Let's do some more questions. I have more questions. Of course we have more questions. This question asks, a security administrator has removed malware from a system and has enabled system protection. Which of the following would be the best next step? Would it be schedule scans? Schedule scans, not sure why I wrote it that way. Verify malware symptoms, educate the user, update AV, or quarantine system? I try not to write my own tongue twisters. In this case, I did it. A security administrator has removed malware from a system and has enabled system protection. Which of the following would be the best next step? Would it be schedule scans, verify malware symptoms, educate the user, update AV, or quarantine the system? If you think you know the answer, follow the link that's on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. So the question in the chat room, can we just get the PDF? If you don't want the physical book, you don't have to buy the physical book. In fact, the PDF, a little less expensive because you don't have to print anything out. I don't have to ship something to you. The PDF may be a good option for you. There's the digital edition that's on my site is the PDF, and the physical edition is the physical printed book that you see here. It's nice. It's got a glossy cover. That's pretty nice. That's blurry, but it's got everything in there, which is kind of nice. The PDF is also good because if you have a PDF reader with annotation or it's on your tablet, you can write things on it, you can draw, you can color. There's things you can do with that as well. I think a PDF gives you a few more options for studying that you may not have through other means. All right, we've had a number of folks lock in their answer. Not as many people answering this one quite as fast as the other one. So this is a really good example of what do we expect when we look at the results. Let's see how this one went. The question asked, a security administrator has removed malware from a system and has enabled system protection. Which of the following would be the best next step? Would it be schedule scans, verify malware symptoms, educate the user, update AV, or quarantine the system? As you might have already guessed, we're really looking at the process of malware removal that is very well documented in the CompTIA exam objectives. So what did you answer? We're all over the place, aren't we? But we did get a plurality of you, 42% of you, that said educate the user. 26% of you say schedule scans because it sounds so good. A tie for third place with 13% each between update antivirus, that's what AV is, and then you've got quarantine system, which is also 13%. We've also got, lastly, verify malware symptoms at 5%. Well, everybody kind of realized very quickly, why would you verify malware symptoms if you've already removed the malware? So there's some type of logic going on there, isn't it? But now that we've already removed the malware, we have re-enabled system protection, because if you recall, in the entire process of malware removal, we disable system protection at the beginning, we remove everything, and then we re-enable it just to make sure nothing happens. So if that's the case, the next move that we would go through is the last step of malware removal, and that's to talk to the end user about how we got into this situation to begin with and things that we might be able to do to prevent this in the future. So this is one where you can tell people, you know, when it pops up that message on the screens that says you have malware and you should contact an administrator, you should call me. You should open a ticket. Do you have maybe you put messages and things on the wall when people get off the elevator that says, got malware? And here's what you do, so that people are constantly being able to see what they should be doing to make this happen. It's kind of difficult as an IT professional to make people aware that you are there and available to help them if something like this happens, especially if you get into situations with malware that are very malicious, that can, like ransomware, can cause significant problems, not just in availability, but significant costs to the organization. So this is the last step, the 7th step of removing malware. If you want to see the entire steps from 1 through 7, you can have a look at our video at 220.1102, section 3.3, the video aptly named Removing Malware. And that is the right answer. Educating the end user is that last step after we have re-enabled system protection. Before enabling system protections, where you've already gotten rid of everything, and you might want to turn on some scanning if it's not there already. Obviously, as we mentioned, verifying malware systems is early on. Very first step is identifying, oh, wait, there's malware here. Then we have updating antivirus, which you would normally do before removing the malware, just to ensure that you have the latest signatures on your computer. And lastly, quarantine the system, which is what you would do after identifying the malware symptoms. Obviously, in this case, you've already removed the malware. You've enabled system protection. The only thing available at this point is educating the user. 43% of you got that one right. Absolutely correct. Let's do another one. I've got more 1102 questions here. This next one is a question that asks, a company stores computer payment details to process monthly subscription fees. Which of the following would provide security guidelines for this information? Would it be GDPR, PHI, FOSS, PII, or PCI DSS? A company stores computer payment details to process monthly subscription fees. Which of the following would provide security guidelines for this information? Is it GDPR, PHI, FOSS, PII, or PCI DSS? It's got to be one of those, right? If you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. It's got to be in there somewhere. This is all from the CompTIA exam objectives, because there's some people in the chat room saying, wait, where did this come from? What are these strange letters and numbers I see on my screen? That's what those are. They do come directly from the 1102 exam objectives. I'll talk in just a moment of how you can get your hands on those objectives and make that happen. I think that's one where if you ever get into the details of abbreviations, acronyms, and all of those weird terms that we use in technology, it is useful to know what they mean, but it's even more useful to know how you would use them. So, and some of these abbreviations on here may not help you with this question. And that's why I tell people that spend a lot of time with their flashcards going, GDPR means this, PHI means this, FOSS means this, PII stands for this, PCI DSS, that's what these letters stand for. It has some use there to at least understand what those abbreviations are referring to with their names and numbers, but it doesn't tell you what it does. And on the exam, you're going to be asked a lot of questions about what these things do. Somebody asked me the other day why I don't have a set of flashcards, and that's why. Because you don't get a lot of flashcard questions on the exam. You get no flashcard questions on the exam. Most everything you're going to be doing on the exam is multiple steps and understanding the underlying technologies of these abbreviations so that you can then answer questions on the exam. Pretty important. Let's see how you did with this one. This question asks, a company stores computer payment details to process monthly subscription fees. Which of the following would provide security guidelines for this information? Is it GDPR, PHI, FOSS, PII, or PCI DSS? How did you answer? What did we do? Well, 53% of us, if we had to go with a majority, that is technically a majority, say it's PCI DSS. 20% say it's GDPR. 16% say PII, 7% say FOSS, and then 4% say PHI. So this is where I would bet most of us are in this scenario where we have a service that we use every month online, and it just automatically renews itself every month. And unless you're using PayPal, which is a little bit different, but if you're using a credit card, that credit card has to be on file with that merchant. They have to have it there. They can't just say, give it to us once, and then we'll tell your bank that you said it was okay, so just give us the money every month. No. You have to always have that credit card number, the expiration, the CVV in most cases, to be able to process a transaction. That's why if you look at the Professor Messer website, I have nobody's financial information. I don't store this information by design. I don't want your information. And there are no memberships or monthly payments I do on my site anyway. But if I get to that point, I would have to store them. And if I did store those credit cards and the transactions you may be working with a third party that stores your credit card, they are subject to the requirements that the credit card companies put on them for security. Those requirements are encapsulated in the PCI DSS, which stands for the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. And the security of these credit cards is so important, primarily because we've had so many credit cards stolen online that the amount of security we're putting on these credit cards and the way we evaluate the use of these credit cards is constantly evolving, constantly changing to be able to make all of those things happen. So this is why if you're ever in a situation where you're collecting credit card information with your company, make sure that you are looking at the requirements of PCI DSS and following all of their directions and instructions. I think if you ever, for example, were to look at a company that collects credit card information, healthcare information, anything that's like that, they all pretty much follow the same standard. The data has to be secure. There has to be limited access to this data. In fact, if you could separate the data from the rest of your network, that would be good. You have to have a firewall. You have to have an IPS function in that firewall. They have all these requirements to be able to make that happen. And so the PCI DSS has all of these different objectives inside of it to help keep this data secure. And if you don't follow these guidelines, you could be fined by the credit card company. So that's another important consideration. And ultimately, they may decide you can't take our credit card anymore because you can't keep this stuff safe. I don't know that they've ever done that completely before. But they certainly go through the process of making sure that all of this information is secure and that your card data that you're storing is something that an attacker could not gain access to. So lots there to worry about. If you're someone who's working with credit cards, you certainly need to know about the PCI DSS. And indeed, that was the correct answer here. 54% of you got that one absolutely right. The GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, used primarily in Europe for protecting users' data. We don't have a similar requirement here in the United States or really North America in general. But the idea of the user having more control over their data is one that's gathering a lot of interest around the world, not just in Europe, but everywhere else. This ideally, once they started working on GDPR, was more of an idea of have the user be able to remove themselves online. The right to be forgotten was the description they made with that. Now, ultimately, the final set of requirements, the final set of regulations really did not go that far, quite that far. In fact, it'd be really, really difficult to have it go that far. But there's other countries that have picked up on this. Other places you can go that have similar requirements. I do have people occasionally send me GDPR requests to delete their accounts. I'm not always able to do that because their accounts are tied to financial transactions that have been made, and I am required to keep financial transactions on my books for a certain amount of time based on the requirements from the IRS inside the United States. But if your account didn't have any financial requirements and you asked me to delete it, I'd delete it. Yeah, why not? You asked for it, I'll get rid of it. That's fine. But if it's something where I still have to keep the data, I can disable access to the rest of the world, but I still have to keep the data on my side. That is all listed and written out in my privacy policy that's on my website. And of course, everybody should have a well-written privacy policy on the sites they visit. We also have FOSS, the free open source. This is the idea of having open source software is valuable, especially if you're someone who likes to create software, create that software with others, share that software with the world, all through a free and open source license. That is FOSS. And in this case, FOSS is not the security guidelines we were looking for. It's not a security guideline at all. And then PHI and PII are for the health information and personal information about yourself. These are not guidelines. They really describe a type of data. So health information is obviously the things you would have if you go to a doctor, you get x-rays, you get some type of test, you get blood work. All of that information is secure and private because we can assign that data as being PHI, healthcare information. So it has a certain type of access level associated with it because of the type of data that it is. PII, personally identifiable information, are things that would tie it back to you. So your name, your birthday, your address, your phone number, those are personally identifiable. There's a lot of, yes, I agree. Chat room is telling me a lot of letters here, a lot of acronyms, a lot of things you have to pour through. Just wait till you get to Network Plus. This is nothing. These are the easy ones. So hopefully you are familiar with these abbreviations. If you're not, I highly recommend you go back and have a look at them. They are in my video 4.6 privacy, licensing, and policies. I go through each one of them so that you can be more familiar with what they happen to be. That might help you out as well. Now, if you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, which means you've already passed one of your certification exams, you need to renew that certification exam, I'd like to give you a webinar category CEU that you could apply towards that renewal if that's the way that you're planning to renew that certification. The way that you would do that is to follow these instructions. You have to follow the instructions to be able to earn the CEU. You go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, you click the Contact Us link. In that Contact Us link, put the information on the screen for your name, your email address. In the subject line, put March 2023. And in the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code word of the month, subscription fees. Subscription fees is the super secret code word of the month. In this case, code words of the month. You can also put anything else you would like into the body of that message if you would like. I read through every single one of them, and I love to get the notes that you send. I'm not able to respond back to all of them because we get hundreds of these in every month, but I will at least read through them as I'm processing them and sending them back to you. I make sure I read through every single one that you send me. I do that manually just to make sure they match up, and then I have an automated system that then goes through and sends you all of those emails that you're getting. So again, go to the top or the bottom of the website, click Contact Us, put your name, your email address, put as the subject line March 2023, and the body of the message, put the super secret code words of the month, subscription fees. And that's the one that will lock that in. It'll take me about a week to get this to you, sometimes a little faster, sometimes a little slower, but I will get to you eventually. Do not worry. I will make sure it gets there. And that applies whether you are here watching this live or whether you're watching this on a replay. So months later, I get these in where somebody says, I watched this from a year ago. Can I still get CEU credit? You absolutely can. And I send it off to them. So happy to do it. Let's do another question. I know we're at the top of the hour, but let's at least get one more in here, right? This next question on this list is this one that asks, a Windows user has shared a folder with the name report $. Which of the following would best describe this share? Well, here are the 5 different options. Will not appear in the list of available shares. All files in the share are encrypted. All share documents are read-only. The share is limited to administrators only. And the share is a redirected folder. It's got to be one of these 5. A Windows user has shared a folder with the name report $. Which of the following would best describe this share? Is it will not appear in the list of available shares? All files in the share are encrypted. All share documents are read-only. The share is limited to administrators only. Or the share is a redirected folder. Which one of those is it? We don't know. The way you would do it, or the way we're going to find out, is to go to the link that's on your screen, professormesser.com, and lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We're going to go through this and make that happen. Oh, sure. Yeah. If you watch a study group from 3 months ago, send in the CEU. Absolutely do it. More than happy to send those CEUs out. That's why they're there. Now, obviously, if you look at the requirements from CompTIA, you can't just watch 30 of these, get 30 webinar category CEUs, and use those for renewal. Unfortunately, that won't work to make that happen. So I put I probably, when I copied and pasted this was probably not quite right. But we're going to go with this. We're going to learn from all of these. So we're going to break down where all of these different things are. I like this as we're going through the different shares, our different questions and working with them, the different things you can do with the data. This one is one where all of these things you may want to do with the data, but only one of them applies to this particular question. I love questions where I can work through different scenarios in the answer. So we kind of have 5 different scenarios here. It's sort of a reverse question in a lot of ways, which are kind of fun to work with. So this is one, if you're ever in the scenario where you are working through these problems, hopefully this will be familiar with what you've been working with. I think this might be very useful, especially if you're administering a Windows network or you're a Windows user. Don't even have to be an administrator. We'll talk about that in a moment. So a lot of you have locked this one in. Let's see how you did. The question asks, a Windows user has shared a folder with the name report $. Which of the following would best describe this share? Is it will not appear in the list of available shares. All files in the share are encrypted. All shared documents are read-only. The share is limited to administrators only, or the share is a redirected folder. But what did you put? Let's find out. The results have 39% say it won't appear in the list of available shares. We have 19% that say the share is limited to administrators only. And then we have 14 to 15%, a 3-way tie for third, between all shares in the file all files in the share are encrypted, all share documents are read-only, and the share is a redirected folder. So this is the interesting part of working with these technologies, is knowing how to use it to best make data available to others. And if you are on a very busy network, this can be very, very useful for you. Obviously, file shares are a common part of using Windows. If you need to get data shared from a central server or from a folder that's on your system, you can simply create what Windows calls a Windows share. What a great name, because that's what we're doing. We're sharing this data with other people that are on the network. You can see these shares and create these shares in your File Explorer, and you can see what shares have been created on your system by going into Computer Management and looking at the shared folders option. It'll show you all the different folders on your system that are set up to be shared, where those folders happen to be, and even descriptions and other information you may put on those. So the way this works is that if somebody wants access to that data, they can take a drive letter they're not currently using in Windows and assign it to that share. So they might say that let's make the H drive on my system be the shared folder that's out on our server. And that's another great example of being able to use the data that's on that other system, but being able to access it in a way that's very familiar by simply using the drive letter. That makes perfect sense. But what if you're in a network where there are hundreds of shares on the system, and if you try to search for one on the server, it just brings up hundreds and hundreds of shares because you have just tons of people in your company. They all have different shares they're working with. It might make more sense not to add to that big list. Let's hide the share so that it does not show up in the list of shares that are on your system. So any share that you create where the last character of the share is the $ are hidden shares. Now, functionally, it works exactly the same way as every other share, but it's hidden if anybody is listing the shares that are available on that server. But if you know the share name, or you hand somebody the share name, they can easily connect to it if they have the appropriate authentication. So as long as they have rights and permissions to access it, if they know that it is report $ as the name of the share, they will very easily be able to access that as if it did not have the $ at the end. But anybody listing these out and seeing them obviously will not see it in a big predefined list of shares on that server. Now, I put an important caveat here is that you may think if it's hidden, it's somehow more secure. And that fits squarely into the category of security by obscurity. There's obviously a term for this. Security by obscurity means that if you know the method used for the security, you can easily circumvent it. So by simply hiding it, making it so that you can't see the share, that's not security. As long as you know the name, you can find it. And in fact, you can still find it even though the $ is there. There's lots of other ways to get around that piece of it. It's not a security feature. You would still have to apply rights and permissions, ACLs, assign groups who has access to this so that you could limit access to it even though you are hiding it from that list of share names. That was what we were looking for. So the 40% of you that say answered A will not appear in the list of available shares. That's exactly what that report $ is. That $ on the end does provide that. So that's the real key. And knowing where exactly that goes. Now, having all files in the share encrypted will be something that would need to be enabled by the administrator of the share, the owner of the share. And the way that you would do that is using a technology we already talked about, EFS, encrypting file system. So if you want those share files to be encrypted, you would need to go into that folder, go into the properties of the folder, and tell Windows, please encrypt anything that's in this folder, and it will do that. So very easy to make that happen. All share documents are read-only. That is the $ that's there, and the name of the share has nothing to do with the access to the data that is inside of that share. You still have to set rights and permissions, and you as the owner of the share would have to set permissions that limited access to write data into the share. So it's all available to you. The share is limited to administrators only. Nope. If you have the correct username and password or the correct authentication to be able to gain access to this share, you can easily access it, even though it's not listed in the list of shares. As long as you know that the name is report $, you can easily add it and access that data. And it's not limited to just administrators. And then you have the share is a redirected folder. That's something you should certainly know about because there's a whole Active Directory section on the 1102 where we talk about redirected folders. I give you a demonstration, in fact, of the Active Directory pieces where I redirect a folder from your local machine where you think you're clicking on My Documents, which normally would be on your computer. But in reality, I've redirected that folder to a central server so that every time you store files into what you think is your documents folder, you're really storing it into your documents folder that's on a different server where I can easily back up those files at any time. So those are the different options. The only one that fits here with this oddly named report $, now we know why it's not really that odd at all. It just makes that particular share disappear from any list of shares that you might use. For example, if you use the net view command at the command prompt in Windows, that's a good example of viewing all the shares that are on a system. with the $sign, it doesn't show up on a net view command. So that's what we were looking for here, was not appearing in the list of available shares. Hopefully that gives you some perspective into how you can help maintain and manage the shares that are on your computer. Anybody can do that. If you are someone who is managing the shares on your system, you're creating your own shares, just put a $sign and now nobody can see it. This is a really good example, by the way, of these multi-step questions that you will run into. One of the challenges I always find when working through questions like this is that there are a lot of practice questions you will find on the internet, and what I find is the vast majority of them, not the highest quality questions. They certainly aren't written with the same style or tone as the actual exam. In many cases, they are very simplified trivia type questions like the ones I mentioned earlier, or they're questions that are outdated, that are no longer part of the exam. And a lot of people say, well, that was really hard. It wasn't hard. They were asking you questions that you didn't study because they're not on the exam anymore. That's the part that really drives me crazy, is trying to find those. So I thought, what if there was a set of practice exams that was written by somebody specifically with the idea of they're always updated with the latest exam objectives. They're written with the same tone and style of the actual exam. And when you take them at the end of it, you realize this is a well laid out set of questions that follows exactly the same set of distribution between the different domains that you would find on the exam. Once you do all of that, then you've got this. It's my practice exams book. And the practice exam has 380 pages. It is 3 full question and answer exams, 90 question exams that include both questions for the multiple choice part. Every single one of these has 5 performance-based questions at the beginning. So there's 15 performance-based questions in this book. I have both, of course, PDF versions and physical editions as well. I think it'd be better if I just showed you what this looked like. Let's do another question. Again, no answers in the chat room, no hints in the chat room, but this is my practice exams book. So we'll do this question A13. And this should be an easy one because it sounds like this is one that we've done already today. Which of these Windows features provides full disk encryption for all data on a storage drive? Not sure if we talked about this or not. We're about to find out. Is it domain services, EFS, RDP, or BitLocker? And you'll notice that you have the option to go to page 33 to look at the quick answer. Is it A, B, C, or D? But we also have a details link on page 49. We're going to look at that right now. Now, of course, this is a PDF. So if I have this on my tablet, I could grab my pen, I can annotate, I can mark what I think the right answer is. Even when you don't have a pen, I've got a mouse here, but this is a PDF reader, and you can mark things with a particular color, for example, on here. Now, because this is a PDF, I have links here for page 49. So instead of scrolling through to page 49, I just click the details and it passes me down to page 49 just like that. So here's the question again, and it tells me that the answer is D, BitLocker, and explains to you why this is BitLocker. BitLocker provides full disk encryption, FDE, for Windows operating system volumes. So now you know that's full disk encryption to be able to do that. Now, my problem is when I take these exams, I always pick something else that's not the right answer, and it always tells me why the right answer is right, but very rarely does it tell you why the wrong answers are wrong. And I think this is a great opportunity for learning. If you can get more information about why you got it wrong, you can fix those synapses in your brain or even learn more about the topic that you chose and then circle back and understand why the right answer is right. So if you scroll through here, you'll see that every incorrect answer is listed with a description of why it is incorrect in this particular context. So this is why if you picked EFS, you'll see why EFS is not the right answer. But more importantly, now you've done EFS, you have understood what domain services are used for in this context, you understand what RDP might be, and you'll notice that all the abbreviations in this book are also I write them all out. So if you're just going through this for the first time, you say, RDP, what are they talking about? I don't know what RDP is. Well, I spell it out for you. Remote Desktop Protocol, so that you'll be able to have some reference to it and might even jog your memory when you're looking through it. And then lastly, once you step through those, I have more information. So if you read the question and you just didn't even know what the question was about, like the topics in the question, you don't recall, you don't even remember seeing the video on it, you can easily click the links that are here and it will open up a new window and show you the video that's associated with the topics inside of this question on the practice exam. And then once you're done, I'm in a PDF reader, so I can use the back button in my PDF reader and I go back to where I started, and then I can go to the next question that's in my book. Those are my practice exams. So if you're someone who is looking to learn more about practice exams, or you need some practice exams to go through at the very end of your studies, this might be a good solution for you. Have a look at them. They're on my site. You can read more about them at professormesser.com/core2pe. That's a great way to get a little bit more practice before you walk into an actual exam. Hopefully that can give you more perspective too on the things that would really make a difference for passing this exam. It's a good check to see, do I really know what's expected of me? Well, one way to tell is to take these practice exams. Find out more on my website, professormesser.com/core2pe. Well, we've got a lot more to do today. I'm going to open up the phone lines in a moment in our after show. Before we do, I'll let you know that if you've not already downloaded the exam objectives, make sure you do that. Go to professormesser.com/objectives. It's absolutely free. They're available to download for free from the CompTIA website. They have everything you need to know inside of them to be able to pass this exam. So make sure you are familiar with these. They have objectives out there for all of the Core 1 and Core 2 exams, Network Plus, Security Plus, and everything else. It's very rare for a certifying body to give you this much information about the exam. Make sure you take advantage of it. When you start taking your Cisco and Microsoft exams, you're not going to get this. So enjoy this while you have it. It's going to be so great to be able to make that happen. We've got a lot more to do. Stick around for the after show, but I'll also let you know that we do these study groups every month. I do 2 A+, a Network Plus, and a Security Plus study group each month. Of course, next week on our schedule for March, we have our Network Plus on Tuesday and Security Plus on Thursday, getting both of those together in the same month. And if you get into April, you'll notice that our A+ study groups are for April 4th and April the 6th. You'll notice also, if you were here Tuesday, you'll notice that the Network Plus for April has changed a bit. So the Network Plus was on the 12th. You'll notice it's now on the 13th. These things tend to change all the time. My life is just chaos. So whatever going on behind the scenes sometimes requires that I move things around. So although I'm telling you these dates today, I really do expect that you'll have to check in sometime before just to make sure we're still on schedule. One way you can do that is to look at our calendar, which is always updated with the latest. It's at professormesser.com/calendar. I also have an events calendar that's in Discord. So if you are already part of our Discord, you can click the events channel at the top, and it even tells you the time and date in your local time zone, which makes things a little bit easier. Well, stick around for the after show. I'll take questions from the chat room. We'll talk more about some of the things that you would like to know about instead of me asking all the questions. Don't forget about our course notes and our practice exams on our website. If you're getting a voucher, make sure you get the discounted vouchers that are available on our site. Don't pay full price on CompTIA's site, and get my Exam Hacks ebook available for free along with that. And don't forget about us on Twitter, on Instagram, on the YouTube channel. And if you love this video, it'd be great if you gave it a thumbs up too. I'm constantly talking with my associates over on the YouTube side. They're always looking at my statistics and showing me statistics about what people are doing on the videos. And they're helping to make sure that your experience is the best it can possibly be on the YouTube platform. And the only way we're able to do that is if you subscribe and if you give these videos the thumbs up that they deserve. If you didn't like it, you can thumbs down as well. We track those things as well. So we want to know if you like it or you don't like it. Feel free to be honest and give us your opinion with all of those. Well, thank you for being here. We love it when we do these live streams. Stick around for the after show. Lots of good Q&A coming up. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the A+ study group. Okay, Let's see. I've got a couple of things to go through. One moment, please. Let me take a sip. Okay, everybody. There we go. Hi, everybody. It's time for the after show. In the after show, I take questions from the chat room. I think I might have said earlier, we'll take questions from the phone lines. We used to do phone lines. So much more quick, convenient, and easy to take it from the chat room. So that's what we do these days. If you are on YouTube, there's a YouTube chat that you see. That's the chat I'm looking at. If you're on the Professor Messer website at professormesser.com/live, there's also a chat on the screen, which is an embedded version of the YouTube chat. So either one of those will get you to where you need to be. That's a great place to start. Before we do that, I need to bring over my list of what everybody's doing on the site. One moment while I move some windows around to try to clean things up that are here. I want to thank, there were some folks that came in with some super chats there near the end of the study group, and I want to mention those that we have. One's from Edwin. It is a $49.99 super chat. Edwin, you are coming off the top rope there, my friend. Thank you so much for your support. Edwin writes, it's been over a year since I got it, but you helped me pass my Security Plus. I spent $2,000 on the CompTIA class, and the teacher just read the textbook. You are more knowledgeable and way easier to understand. Thanks, man. Thank you, Edwin. Congratulations on your Security Plus. I'm glad we helped pull you through all of those crazy ideas and topics that are on the Security Plus exam, and there's a lot of them. Security Plus is an intense exam. It is a big exam, and we're so glad to hear that you were able to pass that exam. Hopefully that's been something that's been great. It's been over a year. Love to hear more about what you may have done with that certification, things it may have done for you, because other people here are still working on their Security Plus. So that'd be pretty good to step through it. Thank you also so much for the super chat. I've mentioned before, it helps keeps the lights on here, and that's absolutely the case. It's very motivating. It's one of those things we would not be able to do without your support. So thank you very much for that. And congratulations again on your Security Plus. I also want to thank Jay in the chat room with the $10 super chat. Jay says, hello, Professor. I'm so glad I found you live today. Thanks for all you do for us. Got 80 in my first practice exam, 73 in the second. So I'm taking my third practice exam tomorrow. That would be from our practice exams book. And there's a little table in the front of the book that describes the percentage of questions you get right and where I think you should be to take the exam. And 80 is a very good score. 73, not as good. So hopefully that third exam will even move you up further. But perhaps more importantly, and I'll stress this because we just went through the practice exams book, even if you get a question right, make sure you read through the wrong answers. Because although that wasn't the right answer for that question, the topics and technologies that are in the wrong answers can also appear in your actual exam. So knowing more about all of those technologies is something that can simply help you even more as you study for this exam. So there's my little tip for your third practice exam you go through. Thank you, Jay, for your support. We sure appreciate that as well. Again, keeps things going around here and keeps me motivated, keeps me writing things, making things happen. So this is not a bad topic. It's one that comes up quite a bit because I used to work for an organization that had mobile device managers. We sold them an MDM, and I would manage them and set them up and show how they worked and all of those things. Let's Play says, I have a question about BYOD. That's bring your own device. It's what a lot of people do when they go to work. They have a phone that they bought, this phone has their data on it, connects to their personal email, has links with their personal apps that they use, and they bring it into the office. And the IT folks say, all right, tell us what the IMEI is on your phone, and we're going to ask you to approve us and our MDM, our mobile device manager, for connecting to your device to be able to manage it. And as Let's Play says, that's so creepy. Well, I guess in some degree it can be creepy, but generally speaking, an MDM these days has limited access to only the things associated with the company data on that device. Now, technically speaking, the MDM may have a little bit more access than that on your device. And one of the things that people used to see is that the mobile device manager would have complete control of a device. And I'm sure there must be some MDMs out there that still work that way. It's something that a lot of people aren't doing. Hopefully there's a diminishing number of those these days. But MDMs are really important to be able to manage and protect company data that's on your phone. You obviously have the option there to say, I don't want that type of access to my personal device. And then you'd have to find some other way, whether it's another phone that you purchase or a phone that's provided by the company to make that happen. But one of the benefits there is they carve out a separate partition, if you will, a separate container. I don't want to use those terms because those are terms used for other things in the industry, but it carves out a separate area on your phone just for company data. So if you were to leave the organization, they can delete their data, but still leave all of your personal data intact. That's the idea. Doesn't always quite work perfectly. And so you always should have a very good backup of your data. It's so important. It's not very creepy because obviously your IT team has access to all of the data on the network, all of the data on your laptop, all of the data on your personal desktop computer. They see all of the data going over the network. They manage the access to this data on their next generation firewall. They set up VPNs that are accessing data from your system. So they have a lot of data of yours already. So they don't spend time going through it though. We don't have that kind of time. And in fact, we are very, very closely internally policed ourselves to make sure that people are not misusing access to this data, which I'm sure still happens in some places, but it's something that's very much frowned upon in our industry to being able to make that happen. So there you go. That's how all of those things happen. I'm questioning the sanity of Edwin at this point because I got another $49.99 in super chat from Edwin. Edwin, you're raining us with the wealth here. Thank you so much. Says I got a nice contracting job after my Security Plus. The follow up to the question I asked earlier. So I wanted to share the success I found through you. I'd rather spend $99.98. And we are so happy that you did, Edwin. Thank you so much for your support. And so glad to hear Security Plus, along with all the other things you're doing, was able to make that contracting job happen. Those things happen. They're out there. This is the reason we make these training courses, because I've already been in the cybersecurity industry. I've already worked as a systems engineer. I've already done those things in my career. I know how valuable these certifications are, and I know what jobs are out there and how much they're paying. So this is as much me being your mom and dad and saying, would you please go out and get a good job? But I think it works a little bit better. Now I can be a technician with you and say, here's what we can do. Let's all get together. We'll all get these certifications, and then we'll all go out and get some jobs. I think that's the great approach to go about doing it. Edwin, congratulations on the contracting job you got with Security Plus. Thanks again for the super chat. We really do appreciate that. Thank you so much. Also, well, they're just raining in today. Pearl says, with a $50 super chat, you were referred to me by a professional cybersecurity specialist. What version of Linux do you recommend I start learning? Well, that's a loaded question. I look forward, by the way, to all the cards and letters I get after telling people my opinion of Linux, because that's what always happens is I get everybody else's opinion of Linux. The answer to this one is you can't go wrong. Any version, any build of Linux you would like will give you some experience on installing and using the operating system. But if I had to pick some, the ones I would select are different than probably what I would select a year ago. For those of you keeping track with the Linux world, and in fact, some of the things that I've done with some of the servers I've created, I've got CentOS servers here they're based on Red Hat, the Red Hat services that you would pay for, enterprise type Linux servers. They have a sort of an open source side of that called CentOS. And what they've decided is not to support it in the same way that they had in the past. And a lot of us that were using that as our server builds have looked around at other distributions that might be a better option. And so I think I just built, in fact, I'm glad you mentioned this because I just built a new Linux system about a month ago. If you recall back to last month, we were having such issues with our ISP and being able to really see what was going on with our connectivity to YouTube. If you were on some of our live streams, for example, you know that our YouTube connectivity was suffering. And I really wanted more visibility into what was going on. So I downloaded a Debian distribution, the latest version of Debian, good example, set it up as a server, and then I brought it in and loaded I've never loaded SmokePing before, so I loaded up SmokePing. I'm trying to get this on my screen right now, by the way. We'll figure out all the bells and whistles here as we go along. So SmokePing, there we go, is a utility that I believe it's every 60 seconds by default. It might be 4 or 5 minutes by default. It goes out and pings 20 times to a location. I think the 20 is also a default. And all of these, of course, can be customized. So I set up to ping YouTube every few minutes with those 20 pings and be able to map out how YouTube has been performing over time. Can I connect to it? What's the performance like? And obviously that is a limited number of metrics, but SmokePing allows me to really get quite an interesting distribution of response times. In fact, you'll notice when we kind of started this live stream, notice that our distributions got a little bit wider because now there's more traffic going across the network and it's a lot busier to me. What I was really looking for in this list, this is the last 30 hours of access to that particular server. Here is the 10 days of access. And you'll notice in some cases, the response time went from 20 milliseconds to 140 milliseconds, or in the case where it's all black, I can drag this across here. You can kind of see this a little better. You can see that we were having some outages is what was happening here. When you've got 120 millisecond response time to a server, it's becomes difficult to use that if you're somebody doing live streaming. And then I think I may have mentioned at the beginning of this, there was a number of challenges with our internet connectivity yesterday and the day before. So you can see where there were some significant problems. And this gives me at least some view of the world. To go back to your question, though, it was Debian that allowed me just to load up Linux really quick and make that happen. Now, from a cybersecurity perspective, you may want a distribution that is very specific to cybersecurity. So you might want to find something that really is built around trying to have everything in the distribution there, every tool that you would need by default to make that happen. And there's a number of different options out there for that. It's not always one or the other. One that you see me using in my Security Plus course, I use a couple in my Security Plus course, but they're changing as time goes on. One of the most popular, and I think the one I used for Security Plus was one that included some packet capturing. There was some a breakdown of tools that you could use to do forensics on a hard drive. And so most of what I did in the server course was with Kali. So you might want to download Kali Linux, but there's other security distributions out there you might want to use. Just find the one that works best for you. You really can't go wrong. A lot of people say, well, why don't you start with something sort of entry level? You could start with an Ubuntu, or you could start with Mint. And those are also very good distributions to use on a desktop. So if you're working and want to have a graphical user interface and use Linux that way, Kali's certainly good, but some of those others are very well-rounded. Ubuntu is probably one of the most supported desktop Linux distributions out there, which certainly helps when it comes to troubleshooting, because it's a real challenge when working with Linux. Mint is another good one. There's a bunch of others out there that you could choose from. But like I said, you can't go wrong. Pick one, load it up, pick 2 or 3, install all of them as separate VMs on your system. You'll see just how similar and how different those distributions can be. That's what I would recommend. I have a lot of fun when I load up Kali because there's so many interesting tools in there. And I think I told you before about grabbing some used hard drives off of eBay and using the different tools available in Kali to be able to capture the data that's on those drives, search through them for user data. It's remarkable how many people don't delete these drives that they are selling on eBay. And those tools available in Kali make it very, very simple to click and find exactly what you want. Email addresses, graphics, documents, it's just browsing histories, everything. It's all in there and it finds it automatically. Just remarkable. Thank you also, Pearl, for the super chat. We sure appreciate your support and best of luck with your cybersecurity studies. Let's keep this thing going. We've got some others available. See, people in the chat room are already complaining about the options I gave for my Linux distributions, but you'll have to figure out, make that happen. Let's see what other things we have here. Other options. So this is a good one. It's one that is a common question, and it's difficult to answer for many reasons. Jody asks, what's the starting salary for someone just getting an A+ cert? Well, anytime you do an entry-level position into IT, the starting salary is one at the lower level of the IT ladder. And that lower level depends really on your location. For example, if you're in the DC area, you might be making more than someone who is in the Kansas City area, just because of the number of jobs available and how much they have to compete for knowledgeable employees. So the starting salary is usually what you would expect a starting salary to be. It's certainly not minimum wage, but it's at the lower level of almost anything you would do in IT. Well, that's by design. But here's the real important thing to remember. Your first job in IT is generally going to be an entry-level position. My first job out of college into IT was as a remote service technician. I would get in my car in the morning and I would go visit customers and fix whatever problems or deliver the things that they needed. It was, in the world of technology, it was technical grunt work from that perspective. I was carrying a printer in, plugging in the printer, making sure the printer worked, and going to the next thing. Really not incredibly difficult to do, but you still needed knowledge because sometimes I was installing hard drives, I was upgrading memory modules, I was installing whole systems, networking, whatever it happened to be. So in those cases, you still need some knowledge on what's going on, but you also learn a lot, which was the real benefit. But I stayed in that position 9 months. And that's about as much as I could tolerate. And I think most people that are in a help desk type position, 9 months to a year is probably a good average for how long they stay in that particular role, because that gives you enough time to learn information, to learn more about Windows, to learn more about the network, to learn more about security, databases, the data center, whatever it happens to be, so that then you can then move out of that role into something that's a higher level. And when you move to a higher level, you also get a higher level of pay. So this is the great part about IT, is that move up never stops, it seems. You could just keep moving up and moving up and moving up and moving up. And through my career, I started making money at a very low level. And I think when I finished, I was already making 10 times that amount when I was done with this. So there's potential to earn a great deal of money in IT, but it's not on the entry-level positions. But I always tell people it's not about getting a lot of money from the beginning. It's how quickly you can move up once you're in. So my goal to everybody, and I tell people, get your foot in the door so that you can tell people you have a job in technology, you're working with these technologies, you're learning about Active Directory, you know about these networking things that you've now worked on the help desk or remote technician or whatever you're doing, and now you're able to get a job and keep moving up. We often say when somebody is with an organization 3 years, we always ask them, why are you still here? Because normally you're hopping from company to company so you can keep moving up and making more money. And it's usually about that 3-year mark where we start to see people moving out and up. So that clock starts when somebody starts a job and you're waiting for that 3-year mark to hit. Sometimes it's a 2 year, sometimes it's 1 year, sometimes it's, well, with my last job, I stayed there 7 years. But we were moving as a When I started, we were a startup. And then when I left, we were a public company. So it was a longer story to go from end to end. The salary changes depending on where you are in the country, but don't worry so much about your salary now. If you apply yourself and you keep learning, never stop learning, you'll be able to take that salary and move it up very, very quickly up that scale. So quick, it's remarkable how fast those things happen. So that's what I would recommend as well. Okay. So this is, I don't know why this is happening, but we're going to keep doing it. Edwin says, wanted to spread the appreciation. Edwin, by the way, with another $49.99 super chat, although we're now questioning whether those others went through. And Edwin says, I want to spread the appreciation since I got a great contracting job. I wanted to share my success. My bank wasn't having it. So this is try number 2. You got fraud alert on the first one. So I don't know what's going on there, but if you have questions about that afterwards, Edwin, talk to me. I don't want you spending more money than you intended from the very beginning. And I have things on my side that I can sync up and make sure it works fine with your bank. Thank you so much for your support as well. And thanks for sticking in there. You've gone way above and beyond, so we sure appreciate it. Thanks again. And I get the fraud alert thing. I get that on my purchases a lot, where I have to click the text or get online or call them and say, no, this was really me. I promise. And we have to go through all of those things when they happen too. Other questions. Let's see. This is really good. Jackson says, I'm working in a help desk role now. The company will pay for my A+ in May. I plan on getting Network Plus and Security afterwards. What would you suggest doing first after my A+? Well, the type of direction you go when getting certifications is based on a number of different things, none of which I have any knowledge of. So you certainly can see within the place you're working now, there may be opportunities in different areas. Maybe the Windows desktop team needs people. Maybe the Windows Server team has a requirement. Maybe in your company, you have a separate Active Directory team that may need people. Maybe you like networking. Maybe that part of it's really interesting to you. That's what really interested me after desktop and server administration. So I got really interested in networking. And once you know those things, it's very easy then to take all of that and leverage it into a role in security. So I always tell people, if you haven't done a lot with networking, you should absolutely work on that, because networking is such a comprehensive, and it is a set of skills that you use across all of IT. And this is the real benefit. It's something you don't often see, are skills that you would use everywhere in IT, but certainly that's one of them. Having a skill in networking applies to databases and data centers and the cloud and virtualization and security, and you just keep going. Anything touches in IT touches the network. Everything touches the network. So the more you know about the network, the more valuable you will be, regardless of what you do in your career. Those are skills you will use for the rest of your career. A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus are things that day to day I was pulling from my bag of knowledge every time I went in and saw a customer. Because you need to know how to install these applications properly in Windows. How does Windows communicate through Active Directory so I can then integrate the Active Directory database into the firewall? That's what we're doing with these technologies these days. So there's 3 things all together. I've got a firewall, next generation firewall. I need a lot of security knowledge for that. I want to sync my Active Directory groups to the firewall so I can set security policies based on the pre-existing groups I have in my Active Directory database. Well, now I need some type of link between my firewall and Active Directory. And although it seems like that would be relatively complex, and under the surface it certainly is, the installation of the agents and software you would need to make that link is relatively straightforward if you're already knowledgeable in Windows, Windows permissions, Windows networking, and Windows security. There's your mix. So having a knowledge in A+, adding to that knowledge with Network Plus, and then layering on top of that the security piece are all very good foundations for anything you're going to do in IT. And I think that's why those 3 certifications are just so popular at doing something like that. So that's what I would recommend. Absolutely go through there and see if you can think in your mind what things you like to do. Where do you like to spend your time? Do you like networking? Do you look at packet captures and think, I really want to get into this packet capture and see what's going on this network, which is what happened to me. And then when I started getting into the packet capture, I started seeing TCP. Wow, what is that? Oh, look, there's UDP. I wonder what those things are. I wonder what they do. I was hitting the network for the first time. I'd never even seen these protocols. So there was my opportunity to start learning and keep learning. And as it turns out, having a knowledge at the packet level of how applications and the underlying networking functions operate is pretty valuable. And people were wanting me to come work for them just based on that knowledge. I personally was able to leverage that to a job working for the company that made the protocol analyzers. So you never know where this stuff is going to lead you. I just thought I was having fun looking at packet captures. I rolled that into a 6-figure job working as a systems engineer for the company that made the equipment that I was looking at. I would have never expected it. And to this day, I'm still surprised over all of that. You just never know, but you have to be ready. That's the funny thing about luck. Luck is, what do they say? It's years of preparation is really what luck is. And to that degree, they're not really that wrong. You have to be ready when those opportunities show up. And the only way you're going to be ready is if you've already put the time in. Other questions? Let's keep going on this list. We got quite a bit to go through. Other questions. I'm trying to find one that's a nice follow-up to what we were looking at earlier. So this is pretty good because I think it fits into what you're trying to do, or everybody who's on the study group is trying to do. This is All Right Good Talk, who says, this is my first A+ study group. Welcome. Glad to have you with us. Could you explain your timeline for these study groups and at what point we should be prepared to take the test with studying the book and attending your study group? Well, there is a relatively straightforward barometer that you should use. And I'm going to pull up this barometer right now, and you should do this exact same thing with everything you're working on. So, for example, this study group is the 220-11-02. What I'm going to pull up is a set of exam objectives for the 220-11-02. So this is the ones I mentioned. You can download these directly from CompTIA. They are extensive. I'm going to bring up and make them big on the screen so we can really see what's going on. These objectives are available to download for free from the CompTIA website. Make sure you download them from the CompTIA website and not from some other third-party link, because these do have a version number associated with them. I'm not even sure I've got the latest version here on the screen. But it gives you some introduction about what this certification is. And I'm going to keep scrolling here until I get to the beginning of the objectives. Here they are. So domain 1.0, operating systems. And in section 1.1 of this domain, it's titled Identify Basic Features of Microsoft Windows Editions. So for Windows 10 editions, I need to know Home, Pro, Pro for Workstations, and Enterprise. So already there's a couple of things you can garner from this, is that first, they don't really care about you knowing the Windows 11 so much, because they specifically say Windows 10 editions. And the reason we know that is just earlier in this, there is a note on Windows 11. Versions of Microsoft Windows that are not into mainstream support is determined by Microsoft up to and including Windows 11 are intended content areas of the certification. As such, objectives in which a specific version of Microsoft Windows is not indicated in the main objective title can include content related to Windows 10 and Windows 11 as it relates to the job role. So what they're saying is if we just say Windows in here, we mean Windows 10 and Windows 11. If we specifically say a version of Windows, we really only mean that version of Windows. So in this section 1.1, Windows 10 editions is really about Windows 10. Now, in reality, it's pretty close to Windows 11, but they are telling us you only need to know about Windows 10 editions, and these 4 Windows 10 editions You don't necessarily need to know about other editions that aren't listed here, and there are many other Windows editions, by the way. This is not a comprehensive list, but it's the 4 you need to know for the exam. You also need to know feature differences: domain access versus workgroup, desktop styles and user interface, availability of remote desktop protocol, RDP, random access memory, RAM, support limitations, BitLocker, and gpedit.msc. And you need to know about upgrade paths and the in-place upgrade as it applies to these Windows 10 editions. Those are all checkboxes for you. Those are all lists of things you should know before you take the exam. That's just one section. Now the section 1. Appropriate Microsoft command line tool. For navigation, there's CD, dir, md, rmdir. Command line tool checkboxes. There are places where you should be able to plug in what you think, or at least evaluate yourself on whether you have really studied that topic. Can you explain that topic to someone else who's not in the industry and have them understand what you're telling them? I think that's a good way to do it. So if you're trying to fit, when do I take my exam? Have I really studied the right thing? Are the things that I'm studying really applying to what's expected of me on the exam? It is the exam objectives that will do that. So if you've got a good book, a good video series, some hands-on labs, and some practice exams, you have the core of what you need to do the best, as long as you're using the exam objectives to guide your way as you step through all of them. I think that's a great way to do it. And if I was studying for these exams right now, that's how I would do it as well. I'd use those exam objectives as my guideline. They would tell me exactly what I need to know. That's why if you go into the exam that are the exam objectives, one of the things that you'll notice, oh, and here we lost the internet again. So I like how the folks in my chat room are telling me, hey, something went away. We'll get back. Don't worry. This is usually a very short, commonly short thing. So we will see. Looking at, they did get me. The outage got me, everybody. I wonder if my smoke ping showed me anything as we went there. Be good to bring that up. Let's have a look at what we're really seeing on the smoke ping. You know, one of the things that I notice on here whenever we go live is it gets super busy. You can see the latency gets a little bit, the smoke, there's more smoke as we go live. But right now, we're getting through okay. Although I'm looking at the cache that is over here on our streaming device. Here it is. Oh, coming back up. So see, we're back up, everybody. Only took a moment. You can see that number should be around 3%. It was down at 100. That's not where you really like to be. You like the cache to be right there. And as soon as it hits 3 there, now we've maxed out. The network is back up. And everything is so much better now that we're able to communicate using those. See, everybody, that's how that worked. So now that we're back, I can tell you that we were sort of at the end of that conversation there, but the real key is to get the exam objectives. That's the way that you're going to know you're studying the right thing. And if you ever get a set of exam questions or practice questions and you think, I didn't study these topics, make sure you go back and reference the exam objectives. You may find that those topics were removed and you're studying older materials, which nobody wants to be able to work through. So folks in the chat room saying, oh, no phone calls today? I don't think we've taken phone calls for like a year. Isn't that about right? I think it is. We don't take phone calls anymore. We just take the questions from the chat. So much easier, so much faster, so much quicker to go through all of them. I think we're able to step through a little bit quicker for the questions we have. So if anyone has a question, you're welcome to put it into the chat. I'm monitoring the chat as we go, and you're able to put them in there, and I'll pull those out. We'll be glad to step through all of them. That's the real key. And as long as we don't have any other problems, I was going to look at the smoke ping that we did just to see if it caught it. It would have to catch it as we were down. And in this particular case, I don't believe it did. Why don't we look at my screen and kind of see what's there? There it is. So when we went down just a couple minutes ago, you can see it didn't show up. We didn't catch it during the outage. The outage was so quick that it just wasn't there. So if you were looking for something that really was a real-time monitoring tool for pinging something like that, I would not use Smoke Ping for that. For you networking folks that are out there, I'd probably use something like Vaping or Fping. Fping is sort of, vaping is not like vaping, it's Vaping. It's a ping utility, but you can have it ping every certain number of seconds, and then it monitors and tracks on the screen what that ping was doing. I have a similar tool. There's a similar tool that's a commercial tool that I use in Mac OS, Windows, and Linux. That's another ping tool that does a similar thing. So if you have an enterprise and you want to maybe do something that's a little more built in, you don't have to build it yourself. You can simply start it up and do some pings. I'm going to bring one up and show you the utility that I use for that. And let's do the same link over to YouTube just so we can make that happen. I think this one should work pretty well. I want to be sure it does before I show it to you. And now I picked the wrong one. Oh, any connection. My firewall's blocking my ping command, as it should. But now I think it's better. I think I told it not to do that. Maybe I should turn that off while I'm trying to demonstrate it to you. What do you think? Let's try it again, everybody. Oh, and it's put in a different IP address too. Those are always good. It put in the IPv6 to YouTube, which I don't know necessarily is what I'd like, but we're going to do it anyway just to see if I can see what's going on. And I've got my firewall up, so it's not working for me. Let me turn that down. There it is. Let's turn off the filter. That's better. Now we can get to YouTube. I'm going to finish. I'm going to clear this out, and we're going to restart. Have this go. So here is a tool I want to share. This is Ping Plotter. I've already shown this before, and I'm not doing a very good job of this, though, because it's filtered through my firewall. But I think you should give you a little perspective. So Ping Plotter is sort of a combination of a trace route at the top. You can see the trace route that I'm doing to YouTube. It's using IPv6, which is not ideal for what we're doing. And I've got a breakdown here showing the response times. And because we're doing IPv6, it's sort of a mess. If I can show one of these threads, I don't know that I can, that can break this down for me. But down at the bottom, you would get a view of response time going through the network and give you ping times, which is kind of nice. And it's doing this every 2.5 seconds, and you can change that. So if you have an outage of 10 seconds, you're catching the outage, which is really the benefit. Outage is red on here. You can see sometimes I do get a response back. Poor YouTube it's either YouTube very busy or my network connection and IPv6, which is also entirely possible that's problematic. That's sort of an ad hoc one that I was using, but Vaping is a similar tool. It's free and open source. It uses RRD tool to store the data. It's very flexible and modular. And I might load that up so that I can have something that's sort of similar to that online ping in Mac OS, but it's something that's I can run for free. Maybe I can grab something like a Raspberry Pi, load it on that. It's just in this tiny little box sitting in the corner, constantly monitoring the network. It'd be a great way to prove to your ISP what you're seeing over time, because you're taking those measurements from the perspective of where you're sitting out to different points on the internet, which is super awesome whenever you're trying to prove things. One of the things that I really like whenever I'm going through these particular challenges, these problems of working with an ISP or a third party, is having actual metrics. And if you can get somebody from the ISP on the phone and say, we had an outage at 302 to 307, we had another one at 406 to 405, 409, and we can really show them where we were having problems, they can correlate that back to logs that they have on their side if you get the right person on the phone. Otherwise, they really just go through the normal things. Oh, did you reboot your router? Although these days they don't ask that anymore, do they? One of the things I've noticed, especially with my ISP, is when you first call support, it says, thanks for calling. Before we connect you with someone, let's reboot your router. Can we do that? And you say yes, and then they administratively reboot it on their side with no human intervention. And so this is really bad. If you're on the phone going through a voice over IP link, you've just cut your connection. So make sure when you call for that you're not on the network that's being rebooted. So they'll reboot your router and they'll say, hang up, or we're going to hang up with you. And when this reboots, call us back. And then you call back in a few minutes and it says, well, thanks for calling back. Recognizes that you called back. I see that we just rebooted your router. Are you still having problems? Well, yeah, I called you back because I'm having, yes. Okay, let's connect you with somebody, and then they finally get you with a real person. So you don't even have a choice anymore. They're rebooting your router before they even get to a real person, which really great idea. That's not bad. That's a pretty, from a call center, my call center background sort of kicking in, from a call center, time management, asking you to do it on the phone kind of scenario, that's pretty good because you're not involving someone's time for you to do something that we're going to make you do anyway before we even start troubleshooting. Have you turned it off and back on again? That's what it does. So that's the key. Make sure you're familiar with what you might need on your side, because running one of these tools can be very useful, even if it's a simple trace route when the problem is happening or a series of pings. So when it goes out, you could say, I was able to ping my local router. I was able to ping my WAN link on my router. I was able to ping both sides of my router, and I was able to ping your router out there on the network. So I know I'm getting out of my network, but I'm not able then to ping the next hop. So at least you can tell people it's not in my house. I'm able to communicate fine up to a certain point, and here's the point that I'm not able to communicate anymore. So they can really focus their efforts. Now with me and the problems I saw yesterday, and maybe we'll look at this right now since we're sort of talking about this and sort of breaking this down. Since we're in this scenario where, hey, the network went down, there's of course an app I can plug in. It'll load up my account and it will tell me if there's any problems on my local network. Has there something been reported in my area? Are they aware of problems that are on my particular network? And in this case, I'm going to click the link for my account, which is there. And it's going to tell me, yesterday it told me we're aware of problems on your network. We know there's issues. We're working on those issues. And we'll send you a text when those issues are resolved. And that was yesterday morning. And when I got into the studio this morning early, I got an SMS message like at 7 in the morning that said, okay, we fixed it. It took 24 hours, but they did indeed fix that problem up until moments ago. And then again, we don't know what caused the problems moments ago, but I think that's really the idea and the focus behind that, is trying to figure out where is the problem and how can I prove to an ISP that it's not me. I think loading everything up on a Raspberry Pi or something similar and just having it going all the time would be ideal, because then at any time when there's an outage, I can rush over to that and see where was I able to communicate to when this went out. And I would probably ping my local router, I'd ping my WAN link, I'd ping my next hop, and then I'd ping something else on the internet so that we could see exactly what happened with those. And if it's pinging all the time, then I've got 24/7, 365 representation of what's going on. And that way you can say, is a problem with me and my network? Is it with my equipment? Or is it with something else that's outside of my normal control? And then at least you can focus your troubleshooting efforts from there. That's the real idea. Other questions. Let's see what else we might have here, as we're now at the top of the hour. So we're sort of into overtime here. If you do have a question that you would like me to address, you can put it into your YouTube chat or the embedded chat that's on the webpage, and I'm able to see the questions that are coming up. Yes, some folks, as I was mentioning with the exam objectives, if you use older objectives, this is really what you run into. Toztek says, there was a section of the 220.10.01, the previous now retired version of A+, that said compare contrast features of Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 8.1, and Windows 10. Notice all that's gone. So if you're still studying Windows 7, Windows 8, you're getting questions in a practice exam of Windows 8.1, you've got questions that are outdated and that are no longer applicable to the current version of the A+ exam. So make sure you go out and have a look at what the actual current and valid exam objectives say. As long as your exam objectives are for the 220-1101, as we sit here in March of 2023, you've got the right set. They really don't change these exam objectives once they're released. Very, very rarely will they touch those exam objectives. So I think maybe one time in 15 years that's happened. So the exam objectives rarely change, and you've got your copy. Use that copy. You'll be fine. To me, that's the difference between passing this exam and not passing this exam, is going through those exam objectives. And I have had people show up in my chat after they've taken the exam and they said, well, I took my exam and I didn't do well. I failed my exam. And they asked me about things I was not ready for. I said, oh, what topics did they ask? Well, they asked me about Windows 10 editions. Well, that's pretty clearly written right at the beginning of the exam objectives. Did you not see them in the objectives? Was there part of the objectives that you didn't use? And they said, what objectives? So they went and took their exam having no idea that effectively an entire list of things they should know was already written out for them in a very longhand form, bullet by bullet by bullet. And I showed them the objectives. They said, I had no idea. Whenever somebody told me of the objectives, I thought it was just a high-level overview. They didn't realize that it was a detailed set of bullets. And since we're speaking of that, let's look at, these are the exam objectives we just looked at. There's 1.1 and 1.2, 1.3 and 1.4. Next two pages, 1.5, 1.6, 1.7, 1.8, 1.9. Next two pages, 1.10, 1.11. Then domain 2 with 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 2.10. And then we're not done yet. Domain 3, software troubleshooting, 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, 3.4, 3.5, section 4.1 and 4.2, and then 4.3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 4.8 and 4.9. So all of those bullets in all of these pages, as I back up through them, are all things you need to know when you walk in to take your exam. That's your list. That's what you should be studying from. If your study materials are telling you about topics that aren't in this list, you should ignore those for the purposes of the exam. Obviously, if you're in IT, you're going to be learning all these things anyway. But for the purposes of the exam, which is why we are here to pass this exam, stick to the objectives. The questions on the exam, stick to the objectives. And as you go through the objectives and you're looking at other study materials, if they go outside the scope of the objectives, you should ignore that outside the scope information. Stick to the objectives. If you know all of those bullets in the exam objectives, you will pass your exam. That's, I won't say guarantee, but how could you not pass your exam when all of the questions are so tightly focused on the exam objectives? That's the important part. Now, one thing I will mention, because after saying that, someone will say, but wait, on my exam, I got a question about this topic. And it was topic, maybe a new thing that's come out in Windows that nobody's even started to use yet. Well, that's because in the exam objectives, they will, in fact, people mention this when I say, if you know the objectives, you're going to pass your exam, is they go to this part of the, this disclaimer that is in the exam objectives that says, please note, the lists of examples provided in bulleted format are not exhaustive lists. Thank you, lawyers. Other examples of technologies, processes, or tasks pertaining to each objective may also be included on the exam, although not listed or covered in this objectives document. So the thing that I always tell people is it said pertaining to each objective may also be included on the exam. In reality, they aren't. They stick to the objectives. So although they give themselves an out and give themselves the ability to really put anything on here, I mean, given that description, they may ask you questions about the 1982 Chicago Cubs team. And you have to know everything about the Chicago Cubs, but they don't, because that's not on the objectives. Stick to the objectives. Even though they say in the objectives themselves, we might ask you other things, in reality, they don't. And that's why I tell people so passionately, don't worry about anything else. Stick to the objectives. And that's why, because we've done this a number of times before. And that's why it's the real key. This is a pretty good one. And let's go back to Edwin with a $19.99 super chat. They're paying you too much, Edwin. That's all I got to say. Thank you for that again. But, and this is from Topher 96. It says, I like the physical work involved in IT, repairing devices, running and terminating cables, but I can't find anything profitable. I'm assuming a job doing this. Any suggestions? This sort of is the problem if you like that type of thing, because I also like getting into the computers. I like to put things together. I like to find the hardware issues. I like to pull those devices out. I like to replace the motherboards and fix whatever's broken. I love running cables. I love terminating cables. I get it. But you're right. It's not a very profitable part of IT. And in fact, it's difficult to say that the cable management side is really an IT position. It's only sort of a tertiary IT approach when you're working with cable, because you're not really working with what's on the cable. And IT is really what's inside of that cable. It's really not the cable itself. Someone who's doing, and I've had people send me emails saying, I just got and Edwin says, with another $9.99 super chat, you're killing me, Edwin. I'm feeling bad. I'm feeling guilty now. Says it's Toffer 96, not Toffer. Toffer. Well, you said Toffer 96. Oh, Toffer, Toffer instead of Topher. That's what it is. And you don't. Thank you, Edwin. You're being way too kind today. Thank you so much. But I get it. Someone sent me a note recently that said I've been offered an IT position in a help desk, and I've also been offered a position as a cable installer. Which one, if I'm looking at a degree in IT, which one should I take? And I said, there's no question, 100% you go to the help desk. Not 99.99%, not maybe you should. No, you go to the help desk. Although cabling is certainly a complex science into itself. There are a lot of rules and regulations about where you put this cable. It's a low voltage position. That's what they refer to that cabling as, is low voltage. It's and it has a number of things you have to know, and it has its own set of job requirements. It's a physical position. There's a lot of cable pulling. There's a lot of dragging your things through a ceiling or under a floor. It's work. It's like hard work. But more importantly, it doesn't really get into IT. It's more of the physical plant. It's almost the same as putting in an air conditioning in the data center. Is air conditioning important in a data center? It absolutely is. Would the data center fail? Would it stop working if you had no air conditioning? Probably would. But does the person putting in the air conditioning, are they an IT person? They are not. They are an HVAC person. The person putting in the cabling is a low voltage professional who's very good at doing low voltage, but it's not an IT position. You would still need to make the jump into an entry-level IT if you left low voltage. You still would have to learn the IT part of it. So although as fun as it is, and I get it, it's fun to work with hardware. It's fun to work with motherboards and putting together machines. I like building computers. I think it's great. It's almost relaxing and fun to find all of the different pieces. You put them all in the pile, and then you can spend the day putting together the system and putting on the heat sinks and putting on the extra fan you got and really specking out to be exactly the computer you wanted is fantastic, but it doesn't pay very well. The part that pays well is the troubleshooting part. It's you knowing where to find and fix the problems when they happen. It also pays very well to plan large infrastructures of this. I think ultimately it's the planning piece that probably pays the most in IT. so that you can design networks that apply a certain requirement, or design cloud-based infrastructures or virtualized systems or operating systems or whatever it happens to be. The design of those can vary widely. There's usually a lot of planning that goes into these, a lot of questions, a lot of answers, and designing exactly the right scenario based on a set of security requirements, a set of regulations, or just a set of customer requirements. You know, those are very complex designs. They take a lot of time, they take a lot of effort, and they usually pay pretty well. And if you combine that with the knowledge to troubleshoot those same systems, you could ask for a pretty penny when you start working for some of these organizations, because not everybody in the world knows how to solve these problems when the cloud crashes. And if you're someone who's very familiar with the cloud, or you're very familiar with Linux, or you're very familiar with Windows, or whatever your niche is, you can ask for a little more money when you walk in the door. So as much as I wish working with cables and fiber and hardware paid exceptionally well, it pays okay. But in the world of IT, it's more of the lower end of the pay scale. So I really don't have a great answer for you, or a great suggestion, other than focus on learning Windows, focus on learning Linux, focus on understanding more about the network, and you'll be able to get those entry-level positions in IT. And once you have that entry-level position and you move up within a year, you're going to make enough money that you could buy your own motherboards and buy your own cables and do that at home. And that'll be your hobby. So the reason it's not profitable is because it's just not profitable for the people putting in the cable. It's just, it doesn't pay well for them. So the person putting it in, the trickle down there doesn't work very well. You need a position in IT that has a set of knowledge that nobody else has. That's why I always tell people, once you find something interesting, go learn everything you can about that niche. That's the real key in IT, is niches. You need to find an area that people are not paying much attention to, that needs somebody intelligent and who can put in the time to understand all of the nuances about that technology, and you will effectively become the de facto expert in that technology, because nobody else is taking care of it. Nobody else is spending the time to learn it. Nobody else in your organization even understands it. You're the person that does. There's your knowledge, and you can usually use that to even propel yourself and level up again, whether it's within the organization or somebody else. Really, really important to make that happen. This is true in some degree. Edwin, what are you doing, dude? You're killing me here. And you're correct to some degree, but I think there's a benefit here that everyone can get from this. Edwin says, with the $49.99 super chat, I'm looking forward to all of these chargebacks, by the way. Help desk is dry and tedious. I hope it doesn't happen, Edwin. I'm just kidding. I thank you again. Yeah, help desk is dry and tedious, but you get so much experience around how network and administration works. Absolutely true. You will troubleshoot so many issues over and over again. It will, as Edwin says, it will be beaten into you. I'd like to say it will just be, you'll just learn it. It'll just be part of your DNA at that point, because you've done it over and over and over again. Oh, I'm changing a password in Active Directory. So what'd you do this weekend? Really? Did you go to the movies? That sounds great. Oh, Top Gun was really good. It was good. Okay, it's all done. Fix the password. You know, you can do it in your sleep. It's so easy. That's the way we approach help desk. And that's why I think I tell people, you're going to stay there 6 months, 9 months, maybe a year, and then you're going to be off to the next thing, because there's only so many things you can do in the help desk. And that's why I tell people, learn everything you can, be a sponge, accumulate it all, get it in your brain, understand the details behind it, but then also start reaching out for these other things. If the networking piece is exciting, go learn everything you can about what they're doing. Go talk to the networking team. Hey, you guys, are you coming in this weekend for the upgrade? Would you mind if I just hung out and watched what you did? I've done that a number of times in different organizations, just so I can understand more about what they're doing, and then learn from them. And then they, of course, can talk to you about what you know of the technology and what your interest is. The more you know about it, and the more you apply yourself and show people you're interested, the more they will be willing to bring you in and maybe move you out of the help desk and do something in Windows or Linux or networking or whatever it happens to be. There's always opportunities. This is the great thing about IT, is that there's always somewhere to go. There's always somewhere to move up. There's always a new technology to learn. That in fact, there's new technologies nobody's even thought of yet that are going to be around next year that we're now all learning. So it's not even the case that you have to worry that people have a head start, because there is no head start. It's always something new is happening with technology. And so use that to your advantage. Use that to build your own path through this world of technology. And while you're building that path, you're also leveling up, and you're also making more money, and you're also being more financially independent and doing the things that you would like to do. So although the help desk can sometimes be a drag and it can kind of bring you down and you're doing things over and over and over again, just know that this is the temporary state that you've gotten to that is going to allow you to make a lot more money, move up, do things you want to do with your career. Maybe it's not money you're looking for. Maybe it's flexibility in your time. Maybe it's a location of where you'd like to live in the world. All of these things are available to you. These decisions can be made because of your career in IT. You can't do that if you're a truck driver. You can sort of maybe do that if you're a nurse or a doctor, but now you're limited to large areas that have big hospitals or that have big medical facilities. If it's government, you're sort of in certain areas, but IT, you could do anything, anywhere. And that's why I'm so excited about what I do, is because this enables people to make those decisions, to make their life better, to make their family happier, to make themselves happier. And this is such a good way to do it. I know it because I did it myself. And I think that's one of the keys whenever you're hoping to get this type of advice is, what do they know? They've never been in the trenches. Well, I have, for all of my career up to this point. So this is the key, is just keep swimming, just keep learning. And as you keep learning, it's fun. You're learning new things, exciting things. Oh, you learn, oh, that's how that works. And then in the same time, you're learning information you can now use to level up and to do whatever you would like to do with your career. That's the real key. And I think that's the important part of it. Let's end on this one, because this is quite a bit of topics that are going on in the industry. I'm watching this very closely right now, because during the COVID times, when we were all tasked, we all had to wear black with hoods. I didn't have a cape, but I wanted one. We were all sort of hidden in our homes, watching the world go by, and everybody was remote. Suddenly they realized, wow, we could do everything remote. Up until the point where we all came out of our caves again, and they realized, well, we want everybody back in the office. And to be fair, a lot of the IT group said, well, we don't want to come back to the office. We're good. You know, when we come to the office, we sit in our chair and we connect to systems that are located in other states or countries. Well, I could do exactly the same thing at home, and I have been for the last year. And so people realized, well, we could have a bunch of people that are working at home. They were very effective. We have systems in place to evaluate, make sure things are being done. There's no abuse. We can all work together over Zoom, and we see people probably more when we were working at home than when we did when they were in the office, which is probably not true. It's probably not untrue. It's probably the case. So that's why whenever I start looking at jobs now, they are not all remote, though. You'll notice we're seeing this move back to get people back into the building. And I think there's probably a number of reasons behind that. One is that a lot of these companies have very expensive leases, and if nobody goes into the building, they're effectively wasting their time. But another thing, and this is one that I don't think people mention a lot, is that it's so much easier to collaborate with people, especially when you have a very complex environment, if everybody's in the same room, like physically in the same room. I worked for a startup most recently that really required everybody except the field team had to be in the same building. All the developers, all the support team, tech support, project management, product management, logistics, everybody, the vice presidents, the executives, everybody was in the same building, on the same floor in most cases, which was great because when a problem happened with a customer, support could literally slide their chair back and say, hey, you programmed that part of the VPN, right? What happens when this is configured? What should we have there? And they'd say, well, this is what we have. And then if they run into a bug, they can collaborate right there between tech support. The customer's on the phone, tech support is there. They're talking to the programmer that designed the code for that firewall, and they're all able to figure out, is this working as expected? Is this working as unexpected? Is it a bug? Can we fix it? When will the fix come in? And here, what can we do to work around that? That's good stuff. And you can't do that if everybody's working at home. So I get it. There is a benefit to working in the office, but there's also benefits to working at home. And you kind of have to find a place to work where people understand what that's about. I think there's advantages and disadvantages with all of those. So let's talk about, I said that was the last one, but I like this question. So we'll maybe finish up on this one. That's from Mitchell. It says, my first 15-minute interview is coming up for a help desk position. What types of questions should I prepare for? Well, if this is a technical interview, this is usually by somebody who is in the help desk or is a manager of the help desk. They'll probably ask you questions about the things they covered today. What do you know about Windows? What do you know about Active Directory? We have Linux here. What do you know about Linux? They'll step you through. Have you ever changed a password in Active Directory? How do you do that? So this is where your labs that you have in your home lab really come into play. If you have not set up, you're going for a help desk position, they've got Active Directory. Let's just, they do. Everybody does. So have you installed Windows Server? Have you enabled Active Directory in the Windows Server? Have you added some users into your fake corporation in your Active Directory? Have you connected a virtual computer into the Active Directory and then changed their passwords? These are all things you can do at home. I stepped through a number of these in my video on the 1102 course that deals with Active Directory. There's an entire video where we talk about administering the Active Directory database, working with passwords, doing folder redirections. There's some other things, and login scripts are in there where I demonstrate doing these things. But that's just a demonstration. There's so much more you can do there. So that's what I would really recommend, is setting up some labs saying, oh yeah, I installed Windows Server a month ago. I ran into some problems. Here's the problem I ran into, and here's how I fixed it. So this is a perfect conversation to have, is that, oh yeah, I installed Active Directory in my home lab last month. I installed it. I knew that I would need the DNS service because that's how devices on the network find the Active Directory server. So I turned on DNS, but then I installed a virtual machine running Windows and it couldn't find my Active Directory server. And then I realized I had not enabled the DNS of my workstation to be the DNS that's running on the Active Directory server. And once I did that, it was able to find the Active Directory server and it was able to install itself and be part of the Active Directory database. So just that little 2-minute story of the installation you did, the problems you ran into, how you did troubleshooting for the problem, and then ultimately what resolved it and what you learned from that is the type of story you should bring into these meetings. So I mentioned this. I have a video. It's in the YouTube video description of this video of how to get a job in IT with no experience. And I talk about setting up a home lab. And if you're working on networking, you should set up a networking home lab. If you're doing security, you should set up a firewall and an IPS home lab. If you're doing Windows or Linux, you should set up those operating systems with Active Directory, or with Linux, you set up a Linux server. Maybe you're building a web server with a database server and you're integrating those together. Install WordPress on set up a VM, load Linux, load up Debian, install into Debian an Apache web server, install MySQL, and install WordPress, and get them all to work. Then you can tell the story of how you did that. And every time you run into a problem, document the problem so that you have a story. All of your interviews should just be you telling stories, spinning yarns. Now, some interviews you go to, they're going to ask you technical questions. Tell me everything you know about ARP. Tell me what you know about Active Directory. and Active Directory trees. Tell me everything you know about backing up and restoring from Active Directory. You know, there's tons of ways you could go with this. And the real key is when somebody asks something you don't know, you say, you know, I've never done that. I've never been in a case where I've had to back up the entire Active Directory tree, but you can bet I'm going to go home and figure that one out in my home lab as soon as I get there. And I'll build out a design of how I would do that on my network. And I can follow up with you and tell you what I did. Okay. You know, that's what people want to know. We certainly don't expect someone walking into an interview to know everything they possibly could know about the topic, because nobody does. But what we want to know is when you don't know the answer, what do you do next? Where do you go? Who do you query? What information do you gather? How do you test it? And then how do you implement it? You know, that's the real key. So I think that would be some good topics to plan for. And if you search the Google, if you search the YouTube, there's plenty of videos out there that people will do about the top 10 questions you'll get asked in a help desk interview. And they go through, some of them are pretty good. Some of them are not pretty good. So whenever you have those videos where they use the digitized voice, planning for a help desk can provide you with options in IT careers. You know, just stop it right there. Find somebody who knows what they're talking about, and they can kind of step you through how to really understand what they want from you when you walk into some of those interviews. Those are the good ones to have. And avoid the videos, the 110 questions you need to know before going on your help desk interview. You don't need those either. In fact, the more you talk, the less they're going to ask those questions anyway. So the more stories you have, the less they're going to pummel you with technical questions that you might not know. So there's sort of a good reason for having these stories in your back pocket. Walk in there with 3 good stories, have those stories last about 5 to 10 minutes each, and now you're out of time. There you go. Turn the whole thing around. They go, we're going to hire that guy that just couldn't stop talking about the stuff he did in Active Directory. That's what you're shooting for. That would be ideal. I think if you're planning to get that job, you need to show them that you're ready and you're willing to do whatever it takes to make that happen. Hopefully it's giving you some ideas and things you can do with your career with IT. We've gone through a number of questions today. Thanks for being here in this first hour. Thanks for really stepping through in the second hour and giving us some questions. I don't have winners or losers, but I think Edwin goes to the top of the list. Thank you, Edwin, for all of the feedback, the questions, the super chats, and everything else you did there. And some good questions on top of that. Congratulations again on the Security Plus. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Don't forget that we have 2 more study groups next week. Stop in on Tuesday of next week for our Network Plus study group, and the Security Plus study group is Thursday of next week. We're sort of repeating what we did this week. I've already written the questions. They're already ready to go. I just have to sit here on Tuesday and Thursday and give you those. I'd love for you to come back and spend some more time learning what we need to know to either get that job or get a better job. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next time on the A+ Study Group.